the final in the Opera Euro Rapid. Wesley So has seemed almost unbeatable, but Magnus Carlsen is eager to finally win his first event in the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour. So we are expecting an intense fight between two of the brightest chess players in the world. So we're very excited to welcome you to the first day of finals in the Opera Euro Rapid. For the second time in the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour, we will see a final between these two guys. Magnus Carlsen and Wesley So, the American, won the Skilling Open after tiebreaks. So we know the Norwegian Magnus Carlsen is eager to fight back and to safely guide us through this final. Women's Grandmaster Houska and Grandmaster David Howell. And David, do you think, like in the Skilling Open, we will have another tight race between these two?
It's almost too close to call, Kaya. Both of them have been so impressive. These are the two best speed chess players in the world right now. And I don't know, Magnus Carlsen, he's going to be itching for revenge. He's going to be up against it, though, against the super solid Wesley So.
I have to say, David, you're looking very sharp today. Dressed for finals.
Exactly. I've brought my A game. I'm hoping the players will too.
And Jovanka as well, looking beautiful as always. And Jovanka, this tournament, it started with these two players facing each other in the preliminaries.
Right.
And Wesley So won that game.
He did. That game started with a bang, with Wesley So completely outclassing Magnus Carlsen. Absolutely crushed him. It began with that game. It's going to finish with that game. But, you know, we are a few games down the line, and I'm expecting Magnus, of course, he's been on a roller coaster ride. I reckon he's going to pull back.
Well, Magnus Carlsen, he barely made it through from the quarterfinals after tiebreaks. He looked very solid on the first day of the semifinals. But on day two, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave gave him a very tough fight.
Oh.
Whoa.
Yeah, it does look like Magnus Carlsen, he's just, I don't know if he's sacrificing or he's blundering. Look at Maxime's face. He's leaning forward. White can win a piece right now.
Whoa, but look at Magnus. He was smiling, and then his face just shifted, and now he realizes he blundered, and it's a laugh.
Yeah, look at his face. He just trapped his own bishop. His knight retreated, taking away the only escape square, the only retreat square for Black's dark squared bishop. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave with the last move, pushing a pawn forward. Black's bishop is trapped. Magnus is losing.
Wow, I can't believe this is happening again.
Magnus Carlsen, he has resigned. He's about to lose a pawn as well. Piece and a pawn down. Well, huge blunder from the world champion.
Being 2-1 down in the match, Carlsen had to win game 4.
Magnus is in big, big trouble. He missed that move. You saw his reaction again. He's missed another idea. Look at Black's queen in the center of the board, attacking White's bishop, White's knight. He just walked into a pin himself. He self-pinned his own knight. The White knight can never move again because the queen would be attacked behind it. Magnus Carlsen, that's a mouse slip.
That is definitely a mouse slip, and it's game over. Well, we're going to see
Wow.
tiebreaks.
He just put his queen on a square. It can be taken in two different ways. Magnus Carlsen blundering and then mouse slipping, and yeah, we're straight to blitz.
Carlsen won the first blitz game in the tiebreak, but he was not out of the woods yet.
Bar shoots up for Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, and Magnus is also left with 19 seconds on the clock, and it starts ticking again.
Yes,
Well, okay.
It's going wrong now for Magnus Carlsen. Checkmate is almost coming. The Black King is kind of hiding out in the corner. It's trapped. Magnus Carlsen, look at, he's shaking his head. He knows he's just got to wait for his doom now.
Carlsen lost, and it was all down to Armageddon.
Look at that queen move.
Okay.
That queen could not have been taken because the bishop was pinned. White is actually almost ready to give checkmate. Oh, wow.
We
just
have
resigns.
it. Magnus Carlsen super happy. He wins.
I was just in a good mood today, and even losing some games didn't particularly ruin that.
So does that mean, Magnus, that you really feel the form is sort of rising, that it is an uphill for you now, and that you're going to be in great shape for the final?
Look, I'm still making horrendous blunders.
Well, he certainly was in a good mood yesterday, Magnus Carlsen, even if it was a difficult day for him, Jovanka. But with being in a good mood there, what do you think that will do with him before the final?
Well, he would have been feeling very, very lucky because he scraped through his quarterfinals against Dubov. He also scraped through yesterday against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. His blunders haven't been too critical and he's gotten away with it. So I think he'll be feeling quite euphoric, relieved and eager for revenge.
Well, it has been an intense fight for Magnus Carlsen getting to the final. He was the winner of the preliminaries, but in quarterfinals, he barely got through, beating Daniil Dubov in tiebreaks. Wesley So, on the other hand, was a clear winner against Jan-Christoph Duda, and Wesley So was also very solid against Timur Jabo, winning 2-0 in matches. Magnus Carlsen, as we know, barely made it through in tiebreaks against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, but it is these two players who will fight it out in the final. And David, how will it be decided? Who wins this?
So the final will take place over 2 days, a bit like all of the knockout stages up to this point. Same clock times, rapid chess, 15 minutes per player, gaining 10 seconds after every move. If after these 2 days of matches we can't separate them, Blitz and Armageddon chess, more excitement for us.
I have to say, it does seem like this format, the knockout format, is what Magnus has struggled with. He's been great in the round robin and the preliminaries, but Wesley So, is he a favorite in this knockout format?
It's going to be hard to bet against Wesley So. He's looked extremely impressive, very rarely in trouble. He takes his chances when they come, ruthless in his nature, and he's going to be confident after such a good track record in recent history against Magnus Carlsen.
Two great chess players, two great athletes, and that leads us into the quiz of the day, Ivanka.
Yes, in homage to some of the videos that will be coming up, we are asking everyone at home which famous athlete would be the best chess player. You can tweet your answers using the hashtag #ChessChamps, and one lucky winner will win this amazing prize, an AirThings device which measures the air quality in your room. It's a fantastic prize. And yeah, once again, which famous athlete would be the best chess player?
And we do know Magnus Carlsen, we've said it so many times, a great chess player, and he also likes to keep in shape to play football or to go skiing.
He does like to go skiing. Yes, he does. And you can see on the picture there that he indeed did go skiing. And unfortunately, he did break the pole. So whether this is a good or bad omen, we will soon find out today. But yeah, Magnus taking preparation, well, interesting approach.
Yeah.
All right. Well, he's up against Wesley So today. And is it a good thing, David, that he actually has been out, you know, getting his energy up today?
Yeah, for sure. Magnus did scrape through yesterday, but he wasn't quite at his best. And maybe just that change in routine, getting fit, getting some fresh air, that'll just get him in a great mood for today's final.
All right. The opponent is Wesley So. We have named him Wesley Solid. He seems almost unbeatable. He has played 28 games now in the Opera Euro Rapid, 12 of them, almost half of them, ending with victories. So let's get to know the style of this fantastic chess player, Wesley So.
Wesley has one of the most solid strategic styles out there in world chess. He's extremely hard to beat, and he almost never blunders. He always has a harmony among his pieces, he knows where the pieces belong, and he always has a firm positional basis behind every move. That being said, sometimes he can fall victim to his own safety-first approach. Against the very top players in the world, he does occasionally struggle to beat them. This is one of Wesley So's games from the AirThings Masters. He was playing white against Daniil Dubov with the black pieces. In this position, white's rook is extremely strong, eyeing up the black king indirectly. However, the black queen is holding everything together for black. It is the glue that keeps the defense intact. Therefore, Wesley So decided to sacrifice his queen. He played an incredible move that wouldn't even have been on the radar of many top grandmasters. Wesley So brought his queen in deep into black's territory. This queen is actually sacrificed. It's undefended. Black could capture this queen now, but then Wesley So's idea would reveal itself. The queen, the black queen, no longer protects the rook. White could take, giving check, and when the black king moves, the final blow. Checkmate. The black king is now trapped and it cannot capture the white rook, which is protected by the white bishop. It also cannot escape as the other bishop covers its escape route. An incredible idea by Wesley So. It shows that he can attack when given the opportunity.
Well, he keeps having these incredible ideas, Wesley So, or Wesley Solid, as we started calling him. And why are we calling him Wesley Solid, David?
It's simply because he's extremely hard to beat, Wesley So. He's adaptable. He somehow can suck the life out of the position when he wants to, as we saw in that last video clip. When he spots a chance, when he gets that opportunity to shoot at goal, he always seems to get the win in the end. And yeah, he's going to be a tough cookie to crack for Magnus Carlsen.
And Jovanka, before the Meltwater Champions Chess was started, we were talking about Hikaru Nakamura being the big online boss among the Americans. But then Wesley So just seems to be the one person we keep talking about. What has happened to him in this online rapid format?
Yeah, he's been incredibly impressive, and you would never have thought it with the style that David was talking about. Solid, strategic, hard to beat, because you would have thought it was all about winning points, but he has been so impressive. You know, he's been absolutely wonderful, and especially in his match against Radjabov yesterday, absolutely impressive. Even Timur Radjabov himself actually tweeted his congratulations. He says, "Good luck to Wesley So and Magnus Carlsen for the final match. We are going to fight for third place with Vassiljev. Happy to be part of this tour and not too good in semis, but Wesley was impressive." And he also later tweeted, "Going to spend Valentine's Day evening with Vassiljev, Magnus Carlsen and Wesley So. Ever had a dream like that?" You know, but that goes to show Timur Radjabov himself is also incredibly solid, also incredibly very difficult to beat. But Wesley managed, and he didn't even need to take it to tie breaks. So Wesley rising up another level.
Definitely. And talking about that, David, with the form he's now showing in the online chess, it's a long time since we've seen him play over the board. Should we expect him to actually skyrocket on the ranking, on the rating list when they start playing over the board again?
Yeah, I would not be surprised at all to see Wesley So maybe challenge Magnus Carlsen for the world title in years to come. He's had a great last year in all these online tournaments. He won the US Championship online, and we do see he also won the Skilling Open, the first event of the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour. These are some of his achievements. He's got many, many achievements. We do see his peak FIDE rating as well, 28-24. It's the 7th highest rating in chess history out of everyone. Magnus Carlsen, of course, on top. Others include Garry Kasparov, Wesley So, also two-time US champion, and Fischer Random world champion, the reigning champion, having beaten Magnus Carlsen.
He's done a lot of great stuff, Wesley So, especially in the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour, and especially against Magnus Carlsen, who will now face in the final. I think we also have the head-to-head score between these two players in the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour, David, and this is interesting.
Yes, and we do see Wesley So is ahead with 5 wins to Magnus Carlsen's 3. Wesley So, of course, winning that final in the Skilling Open, but also in this tournament in the very first round. Wesley So came out on top. So Magnus Carlsen, he's going to try and make amends. He's going to try and seek redemption in their head-to-head score.
And we mentioned it, Jovanka. It was Wesley So who won the first game in this tournament, and it was against Magnus Carlsen. And we asked Wesley about this yesterday. Is he now actually the favorite? And he was very humble. He said, no, Magnus Carlsen is always the favorite. But is that true? It feels maybe that Wesley So is the favorite in this match now?
It certainly feels like that. I think Wesley likes to portray himself as the underdog. You know, after all, Magnus is the big boss. But, you know, Wesley has been super impressive. He rarely blunders. He's been smooth in his victories. He only had 1 or 2 mishaps, and absolutely impressive performance by Wesley. I do think he is the slight favourite.
Clock's ticking down. We are heading into the play zone. The final starts in less than a minute. And they're sitting across the Atlantic Ocean from each other. Wesley So in Minnesota. The time is 10 a.m. in the morning for him. Magnus Carlsen, 5 p.m. for the world champion. And David, they both have seemed to be been very comfortable and very happy with the time they're playing in.
Yeah, definitely two very different players in terms of their daily routine. Wesley So, he is a bit of a morning bird. He loves starting in the morning, feeling fresh. Magnus Carlsen, I know him quite well, and he tends to wake up a bit later. and he somehow thrives in the evening.
And we see 4 players ready. We have to remember there's also a fight for 3rd place here, and that is between Maxim Vachier-Lagrave and Timur Ajabov. But of course, we're going to follow the final between these 2 fantastic players. I think Magnus's pitcher is frozen there, but he does have the white pieces. And Ivanka, what should we expect from openings here? I mean, yesterday with Maxim Vachier-Lagrave, a lot of the same openings all the time.
Yes.
These 2 players, will there be a lot of different openings?
I think that they will vary the same openings. But we do have to remember in the Skilling Open that these 2 were like titans. They were slugging it out. Magnus won, then Wesley also won. I mean, it really wasn't going to script. To script is basically Wesley and Magnus maneuvering carefully. They both have very solid strategic styles, and I'm expecting it to be nuanced. But you never know. Anything can happen.
And disconnection can also happen. I'm wondering if Magnus Carlsen is struggling with that now, because I think the first game should have started and we do see his camera frozen there, David.
Yeah, that's right. So Magnus Carlsen may be struggling with his connection right now. He will, once he reconnects, start the game, but that's maybe a worrying sign for later on. It's always a bit tricky just psychologically in these online games, knowing that maybe you don't have the most stable connection. So we'll see if that affects Magnus Carlsen later on.
And apparently this is a frozen picture from yesterday of Magnus Carlsen. He hasn't logged on yet.
Oh.
And it was supposed to start 1 minute ago. So where is the world champion? He has to show up soon.
Maybe he's still skiing. Maybe that broken pole made it difficult for him to get back home. And
yes.
We'll see if he arrives.
And there we have him, the world champion, ready to fight it out in the Opera Euro Rapid Final. And there we go, David.
That's right. So the final starts with the Queen's pawn pushing itself forward. Magnus Carlsen went for this strategy a lot yesterday against Maxim Vachier-Lagrave, trying to occupy the centre with white's pawns. We've seen an opening called the Nimzo Indian defence. This is a very solid opening, probably the the most solid opening with the black pieces. Yeah, it has a great reputation there. Wesley So, an expert in this opening with both colours. We do see black's king is the first to get to safety. And Magnus Carlsen playing a bit of a rare move there, bringing his queen out to attack black's bishop. You normally don't want to get your queen out too early. She might get kicked around. You normally want to castle your king, develop your pieces. But there we see Magnus Carlsen immediately challenging Wesley So, and a couple of pawn trades. Okay, white's temporarily up a pawn. Black can capture that pawn back with his dark squared bishop right now. But Wesley So reacting quite quickly on that last move to what I think would have been a surprise from Magnus Carlsen. It's definitely, I mean, it's clear to me at this early stage, Magnus, he's going to go for it in this game. He wants to start on a high. And
bringing out his queen so early, that has been the success for him in quarterfinals and in the semi-final. Just trading off those queens, getting them off, getting into the end game. And is that what this is intended to do, bringing out the queen so early?
Quite possibly.
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, it was quite an interesting tactic that he used against Dubov. He was trying to kill the game in the beginning. Against Maxim Vachier-Lagrave, he was swapping off queens and then expanding with the pawns. He's been very effective with his strategy in day one. The only thing is that I don't think that this is necessarily the correct strategy to employ against Wesley, because Wesley, as we know, is super solid, has a very strategic style. So I think my prediction is that Magnus will be going for those unbalanced positions.
Yeah, Wesley's a completely different kettle of fish compared to Dubov and Vachier-Lagrave. If you give Wesley an endgame where, yes, he might be a tiny bit worse, Wesley's going to hold that draw more often than not. So Magnus may be coming up with a different strategy. The white queen did jump out very early on, but there's no trade in the air quite yet. Black's queen's still on her starting square. And meanwhile, Wesley So played maybe a move that's surprising to some of you at home, putting the black knight on the edge of the board. But if we bring up the analysis board, we can see why Magnus Carlsen is thinking right now. Magnus was the one who chose this opening, but he's the one who's surprised himself. And after this last move, black bringing the knight to the edge of the board, black has an idea, a very clear idea. Later on, once this bishop moves, maybe it will capture this knight, or maybe it will retreat. Black's idea, for example, if we just put a few moves on the board, black's idea might be to bring his knight, which has just moved on the last turn, capture this pawn and suddenly start to kick around this white queen, the white queen having to lose time and retreat. This is why we often advise don't bring your queen out too early. She'll have to lose time later. She'll have to run around. she's stronger than any other piece. So anytime she gets attacked, she'll have to move. And this is Wesley's idea. That's why Magnus Carlsen is stopping. He's just trying to think, OK, what am I going to do with this queen over the next few moves?
Yeah, it's a very old line that that Magnus has chosen. Not so many games, but interesting that he himself is the one that is pausing.
Yeah. So Magnus Carlsen, he took a bit of a think there, but now he just brings his bishop forward, breaking this pin along this diagonal. So Black's bishop was doing a great job. Now it's slightly less effective. Wesley would love to capture this pawn with his knight, but first he has to deal with this bishop. How will Wesley continue here? It's definitely critical at this early stage. Both sides taking a completely different strategy here. White with the quick development with his queen, but temporarily with this extra pawn.
Yeah, and now it's the bishop that captures the pawn.
And a smile from Wesley as he makes that move.
Yeah.
Good mood today, the American, and that's always nice.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, we are still very much following the games that have been played. In fact, the earliest game in this particular variation was played in 1948.
Only slightly before.
And then it was played in 1950, and then there was a pause for about 40 years. No one else touched it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So quite a rare.
Yeah, totally
so interesting
rare.
that we actually have stats for all of that, and that it's actually possible to see that.
Yeah, that's
Amazing.
the beautiful thing about chess. I mean, pretty much every recorded game in history is available out there on a database. And yeah, that's how the top players study. I'm sure Magnus, he would have looked at the games in positions, maybe not this exact position, but at least very similar to this. He's a student of chess history, Magnus Carlsen. If you show him a position, more often than not, he'll say, OK, this was a game between, I don't know, Botvinnik and Tar from 1961. His memory is fantastic. So, yes, he's thinking right now, Magnus Carlsen, but I wouldn't be too surprised if he is if he's aware of games in this position before.
But then actually, so we're talking about other sports today as well, and especially football or soccer, as Americans would say. And because of this, that we have all these games in the databases, is it easier to compare chess players through generations, saying that Magnus Carlsen is the all-time best chess player, or Bobby Fischer is the all-time best chess player, whoever it is? Because it's always difficult in, for example, football, to say that Messi or Maradona is the all-time best, because the stuff changed a lot in football, and the gear and the footballs change and the pitches change. Is it easier in chess?
I would say it's not that easy, actually, to compare players from before because, you know, technology has improved.
Yep.
We have access to information. I mean, you just compare it to the times when Kasparov and Karpov were playing. You know, it was all about researching and finding those novelties and just actually putting your mind and get to work and looking at a board with several other grandmasters. Now, you know, I just turn on my phone, I can turn on my laptop, and I already have at my fingertips the power of a super engine. So, I mean, it's totally different. And the information I can get what's happening over, say, in India, where there's a lot of great tournaments and chess players, I can see what they're playing instantly. And the same goes with online chess. You know, there's many, many databases where you can search for games and just kind of like chill and just kind of study these lines. Whereas before, it wasn't really possible. And if you went even back in time, you know, there was certain gentlemanly codes. Like, for instance, people would sacrifice pieces. You were morally obliged to take those sacrificed pieces. They had a lot longer time to think. We're talking about like 10, 12-hour games. I mean, it was, and you also have the system of adjournments, where if the game got too long, you could suddenly put a halt to the proceedings and go, hang on a second, I want my dinner. Yeah. Let's call it quits, and I'm going to go and study the game with my friends. So it's difficult to compare, actually, I think.
Yeah, and it's not just players who have changed over the years. It's also chess has changed. The format of chess has changed. In the past, you would see world champions. I mean, there were no rapid or blitz tournaments. They would purely play classical chess. Each game would last 7-8 hours minimum. And yeah, often the world champions, they would play maybe 50 games, maximum 100 games per year. Now we see Magnus Carlsen alone in this tournament. He's going to play, 30, 40 games in total. So there's different demands on the players. They have to adapt accordingly. And yes, the chess might not be so accurate. We do see a blunder here or there, but it's also much more creative now because we do realize that chess is so vast and we have these resources that Ivanka mentioned. Yeah, it's just fascinating to see just how that has affected the top players. And Yeah, it's interesting to see as well, playing through those old games, how much chess has changed.
Yeah, I think one of the funniest articles I read when I was a kid was how to play like Morphy's opponents. It was like, no. You suggest that move? That's way too logical. No, he did not play that at all. Yeah, very, very good magazine from Kingpin. It's very...
All right, we do have a move by Magnus. He was thinking for a long time before doing this.
So Magnus, he's playing a move that would not be approved by some of his predecessors, potentially. If we bring up the analysis board, we can see White's last couple of moves. We left it in this position. We were saying, OK, White just brought his bishop forward. He's moved his bishop once, Black recaptured a pawn, and now Magnus moving the same piece again, moving his bishop for the second time in a row. We always say to those starting out the game, don't move the same piece twice in the opening. You need to use all of your pieces. You need to especially get your king to safety first. But Magnus trying to prove that this is an exception to the rule. He'd moved his bishop forward once, moved it forward again. Yes, he's creating this pin against the knight. The knight cannot move because Black's queen would be attacked. But now Magnus has lost a bit of time, and Wesley So playing a very logical move, pushing his pawn. He's going to develop his bishop to this square along a crucial diagonal. This bishop's going to have a huge amount of influence. It does look like Wesley So, he's going to be very happy with how the opening has gone. Meanwhile, Magnus Carlsen putting his queen in a bit of an odd square, moving his bishop twice. He now will face the pressure of how to get the white king to safety. It needs to get to safety soon, otherwise Magnus will live to regret his opening choices.
Ah. All right, we do actually in the Skilling Open. I checked the stats from the final between these two. That was very interesting. They both won their white games on the first day. So all the 4 games was decided with a winner. Magnus winning his 2 white games, Wesley winning his 2 white games. And on day 2, they kept that stat. So Magnus won his first white game, Wesley won his first white game, and then they played 2 draws.
Yes. It was very interesting that you mentioned stats, because I have some also quite fascinating stats. They've been provided by Mr. Dodgy on Twitter, who says, Wesley So blunders once per year, supported by multiple cats. Excellent air quality. I'm just waiting for the tweet to come up. Yeah.
And then there's also some stats on Magnus.
Yeah, there's also some stats on Magnus, which was like blunders once per half game. No cats have shown public support. Poor humidity. So I quite like those stats, you know.
It seems to be in Wesley's favour.
Definitely.
Wesley seems to be the favourite here.
I do like the no cats have shown Magnus public support. So maybe some cats on Twitter can get out there and start cheering for Magnus.
He needs his cat support. Okay, we do have 2 moves, David. Then the bar just switches up a little bit.
Yeah, the computer does think that White's position has improved a bit over the last few moves. I'm shocked by Wesley's last move, which he's played very quickly, Wesley. So maybe he's trying to put the world champion under time pressure, as we saw Vasher de Graaf do that quite successfully against Magnus. Just play quickly, try to make him a bit nervous. But Wesley So, he's gone for the exact same strategy that I said was maybe a bit dubious. He has just moved his dark-squared bishop again. Black's dark-squared bishop, it's moved 4 times now in the opening. It brought itself out on the first move. It went back. It's moved again. Neither side really respecting those traditional conventions of moving the same piece just once in the opening. Wesley So, he's created a pin with his last move against White's knight, but I expect to see, okay, Magnus says that dark squared bishop. I'm also shocked by that move, but he's saying, okay, your dark squared bishop, are you going to trade or are you just going to retreat again? And Wesley So has to move that bishop, which has just been attacked by a pawn. I think the computer may be getting a bit overexcited there. I think from a human point of view, there we go. From a human point of view, that's a very logical move by White, but now we're seeing trades, a lot of trades happening. That was almost blink and you missed it action. Bishop traded itself for a knight, and suddenly the queens have come off the board. Wesley So spotting a very nice idea to get those queens off, and currently we see level material on the board. White has a bishop for Black's knight, but lots of attacks going on. Black's rook was attacked, it moves to attack the white bishop. White's bishop retreats. Black's knight is now attacked in the white half of the board. That knight I expect to either capture a bishop or retreat. 2 very logical moves here for Wesley So, and queens off the board. Magnus Carlsen will be happy. Then again, Wesley So still with a super solid position right now. No real weaknesses.
Yeah. Somehow I don't like it.
You don't like it?
I don't like it for Wesley. I mean, it just seems to be playing straight into Magnus's strengths. You know, we've seen Wesley been incredibly amazing at defending his positions, but I am slightly concerned about this. There's one pawn that I'm thinking could potentially be a target at the right minute, which is the one which is standing behind the white bishop that is on the dark squares. I'm a little bit worried that maybe that could be something that the rooks can pile up and every single piece can create some problems. But OK, we're going to see some trades, and Wesley says, yes, I might potentially have a weakness, but then, you know, you also have a potential weakness because there's a half open line for those rooks to work their magic down.
Yes, and logical play by both sides over the last couple of moves. If we bring up the analysis board, we can show which pawns might be weak right now. Everything's balanced, same level, same material. Both sides have rooks, a knight and bishop each. Wesley So's last move, bringing the rook across, attacking this pawn, which was undefended. That's why Magnus Carlsen had to shift his rook across to defend this pawn. It stands on a light square, so it might become a target later on for Black's bishop as well. Meanwhile, though, White's hope, as Jovanka mentioned, is that this pawn, it's a backward pawn. It can never move now. It's perfectly blockaded by this bishop, and White has an easy plan. He'll bring his rook across, move the bishop, and try and attack this pawn behind it. Meanwhile, Wesley So bringing his knight out, offering a trade. Would you take this knight, Jovanka?
Would I take that knight? Not for the time being. Unless that knight is causing some mischief. Let's have a look. Is that knight going to go anywhere that I
jump in somewhere?
Jump in, yeah, exactly. Suddenly, I see it. No, I'm not going to take it.
Okay.
I'm going to leave my bishop on the board.
So when in doubt, I guess improve a piece, right?
Exactly. That was what I was thinking. Just align that rook to an open line. And I must admit, I get a certain satisfaction when Magnus or Wesley play the moves that I suggest. Yeah.
He played that move the same time I made it on the analysis board, and White's rook now on a fantastic open line. There's actually a huge threat in the position. White is threatening to play bishop takes knight. For example, if Black just plays a kind of innocent move here, we'll play bishop takes knight, and suddenly White's rook enters the position, wins a pawn, and also we call this seventh heaven, when the rook is on the seventh rank. It's got so many targets across this line. But OK, we see Wesley So avoid that. He brings his knight to the middle of the board. Really, really tense right now. Maybe eyeing up this bishop, but it's going to come down to whose pawn is weaker. Is this white pawn weaker? It can be targeted by Black's bishop. Or is this black pawn weaker? This backward pawn, which is pretty much paralyzed right now and completely blocked. It's still in the balance, and it could go either way. But Magnus Carlsen, remember, bit of an endgame expert.
He's fantastic at these nuances as well. You know, the game looks very harmless, looks completely level, but actually isn't. When you kind of like, it's all about those two pawn weaknesses and these two half open lines. And it's very, very tense at the minute.
Yeah, I think Magnus, he'll be happy in the fact that, OK, he's slightly below on the clock, but the queens are off. It makes it more simple in terms of there's no immediate calculation that really needs to be done. You don't have to look for long forcing variations like Magnus has just done there, pushing a pawn at the corner of the board. He's slowly gaining space, slowly improving his position. He did this against Maxi Vachier-Lagrave, just slowly push his pawns and suffocate the opponent. And Magnus, meanwhile, just trying to stifle a laugh there or a smile, but he's back to his game face. And I like that last move for White, just kind of clamping down on that left side of the board, stopping the opponent pushing forward with their pawns.
Yes. It's we kind of call this in chess either the Python strategy or the boa constrictor method. You know, you simply just squeeze the oxygen from your opponent's position until they just can't breathe. It's very unpleasant to watch. So, OK, Wesley has advanced one of his pawns on the right side, the king side, we call it in chess. And I'm guessing that he also wants to take some space and perhaps come in and dislodge that really pesky bishop. Yep.
Black's king now. Maybe, OK, nice and safe, tucked away on that right side, but the Black king wants to join the action. And that last move by Wesley So it's a dual-purpose move. He's pushed his pawn forward, maybe taking away some access squares for the white knight, but also creating a path for the Black king later, after more trades, to bring itself towards the centre. Kings love to be centralised once the queens have left the board. White's king doing a great job. Later on, you can imagine if the rooks disappear, if the knights disappear, the king can dart either side of the board very quickly. And Black's, after Magnus Carlsen's last move, very solid move, I expect to see Black's king now maybe reposition itself closer to the middle of the board. A lot of choice here from Wesley. So no right or wrong answers. It's all about manoeuvring right now. That's why we see him look away. He knows there's no real calculation to be done. He doesn't need to look far in advance. He just needs to improve his pawn structure, improve his pieces.
I do wonder where he's looking at, though. And he's leaving. All right.
Maybe just making sure his cat doesn't appear in front of the screen.
Yes.
Zanzibar.
Zanzibar, who does actually like following the games of chess. And he wasn't the only pet that followed the chess. Ponchik as well. This is Levon Aronion's dog. Was also a keen supporter. But, you know, we are asking everyone for the quiz of the day, which famous athlete would be the best chess player? And we do have some answers. We have a tweet from Klaus who says Lionel Messi would be the best chess player. Imagine as fast and as clever he's calculating how to pass those chess players. He would be the best. Yeah, he would be good, wouldn't he? Yeah. And then we have another tweet from EW who says he thinks that Tom Brady, the quarterback in NFL, would be a great chess player. He's smart, sharp, he rarely blunders and does not crack under pressure. Attack in lightning speed, and he managed his team attack against his opponents. And then another answer from Victoria. Now, this one I agree with. Usain Bolt. Those pawns will be crossing the board really fast.
That's true. Maybe we're just, and Tom Brady just picking up a pawn and just throwing it over the board.
That's actually a variant, a chess variant. I think I saw. Yeah, I know the word in Norwegian. I think it's knippersjakk or something. Oh. I don't know what it's called in English.
Never heard of.
Yeah, you just you have to get your king. You have to throw your pieces or you flick your pieces.
Oh, okay, yeah. That one can only be done with a physical board where you actually have the pieces to throw them. Just try and push them as far as possible down the board.
All right.
We did see Magnus Carlsen smiling, so
I was going to say.
Maybe he likes the suggestions from the viewers.
Well, okay, so we've seen this from Magnus before. Early days and early in the days in the knockout stage, he's had a good time. He's enjoying being in the final here. Little laugh, but that has turned out quite bad for him previously, sort of losing focus and then eventually losing games.
Right. I mean, this laughter has been a little bit of a bad omen, you know.
It must be like a balance, though, because you want to be in a good mood, right? You want to have fun playing, you want to enjoy being in the final, but you don't want to lose focus, of course.
No, you absolutely do not want to lose concentration. I mean, the thing is that you do have to be in a good mood when you play chess. I mean, you have to be feeling super happy, super ready and eager just to enjoy the game in front of you. But I think for Magnus, I think there's been some private joke that he's been finding super funny, and I think that's just been distracting. Okay, so we've had some developments. Magnus has been stopped in his tracks with his idea of expanding those pawns on the left.
Yeah, but I'm not a real fan of his last move, Magnus Carlsen. Look at that. He retreated his bishop, but every move has consequences. White's bishop retreated, but the pawn it was blockading has now pushed forward. Black pushing forward in the centre with his pawn. Black only had one bad kind of aspect to his position, and that was the backward pawn. It's now been released. It's pushed forward. So, OK, White's knight has entered the centre of the board. Nicely placed in the middle there, but I do expect more trades to happen. Magnus Carlsen, maybe with that bishop retreat, White's bishop stepping back, does feel like he's saying goodbye to any real winning chances in this game. We're going to see more pawns leave the board. A couple of trades. White now has two isolated pawns on their left side. Neither pawn protects each other, and they are easy targets for Black's light squared bishop. So I'm not a huge fan of that transition for Magnus Carlsen. He's still got things under control. White's piece is relatively well centralized and controlling some key squares, but the pawns look pretty ugly, and I expect to see more trades quite shortly.
But having said that, you know, White's pawns do look incredibly ugly. I completely agree with that. But, you know, there's something to be said for Black's pawns as well. They also look ugly. And they're also in the same colour as the dark square bishop. So it could be kind of like some tit-for-tat thing.
Yeah. Maybe everything on that left-hand side will just drop
kind
off.
of get dropped off. And then the vacuum cleaner has come on the board, and then we can kind of kiss goodbye to any winning chances for either side.
Yeah, and I know this is taught in the Russian school of chess, and all the top players kind of adhere to this, but they always try and think, what do I want to be left up with? Eventually, one thing I do notice is bishops they are of opposite colour. So they won't be able to trade themselves off easily because they do stand on opposite colours. And they both have targets for the pawns. We could see the knights disappear, the rooks disappear quite easily. And if we are ending up with purely a bishop endgame, it's going to be a dead draw. Meanwhile, Wesley So retreating his knight there. Black is now threatening one of white's pawns. That knight is eyeing up a pawn on the edge of the board. And Magnus Carlsen says, no, I'm going to ignore that pawn. Trying to jump in now with the white knight. There's a huge threat in the position. White's knight is trying to jump in and create a fork. If we bring up the analysis board, there's a huge threat by Magnus Carlsen. This last knight move, bringing the knight forward. If black gets greedy and gobbles up a pawn, suddenly we see a huge fork. So black's rooks are both attacked and the bishop's attacked. Black will not be able to save all three of those at the once. And now Wesley So, maybe he underestimated this move, this knight jump forward. How is he going to deal with this idea of the knight jumping further into black's position? He's got to take some drastic measures, I think. He's going to have to move one of his rooks across.
Yeah, he's done that. He's moved his rook across. And, well, we could be seeing a lot of trades happening.
It looks a bit scary, though, for black. Surely if I just drop my knight into the position, attacking two pieces, you have to move your rook. That's the most valuable one. But suddenly, you've got to be a bit worried. I can take your knight, maybe.
Yeah.
Wesley So has to worry about all of these captures. And, okay, Wesley So looking up there, but Magnus Carlsen, it's his move. He's got to decide how to initiate these trades. Maybe there's a way to turn it in white's favour slightly.
Yeah, so Magnus could now make a decision, and we'll maybe see it in his next move if he will fight for a win in this game.
Yes, I think white is out of danger. If he just wants to make a draw now, Magnus Carlsen, he'll drop his knight into the position, then he'll trade a bishop for a knight, he'll take off his opponent's bishop, everything will just disappear from the board. But maybe there's a way for white to play for a win, and Magnus Carlsen, knowing him, he'll try if it's possible, if there's not too much risk.
Okay.
He takes the knight first.
That was a little bit surprising, that one. I expected the knight drop in because it's just so tempting to attack the rook and the bishop simultaneously. But OK, bishop takes knight, and we're expecting pawn takes bishop. And now we have a really curious suggestion where it's knight against bishop, and those two white pawns are still on light squares, which could be something that white has to deal with. But there is another issue as well, which is that white's king is way better placed than black's king. And that is something.
I think definitely Zanzibar is with Wesley So right now. He's looking down, smiling. See, now he was like cuddling with his cat.
Yeah, maybe that's what Magnus was laughing about. Maybe he saw on Wesley's camera that he was distracted. There we go, Wesley So in a very, very good mood. And okay, good mood, but Magnus makes a good move. And Magnus there, just pushing a pawn forward. Yes, it's on a light square, but it does blunt the effect of black's remaining bishop. Black's bishop was on a long diagonal. It was actually attacking an undefended pawn. So Magnus Carlsen, the way to play against bishops is to shorten their diagonals. Often, if you block them with pawns, then that is the way to just completely nullify their effect. Meanwhile, Wesley So says, okay, your move blunted my bishop, but it doesn't threaten anything. So the black king steps across. The white knight is temporarily a bit better than the bishop. The white knight is on an outpost, protected by pawns. It cannot get kicked away by pawns. Black never really wants to play bishop forward and bishop takes knight, because that would actually allow white to improve his own pawn structure. So the white knight dominates the black bishop right now, but the problem is there's no immediate targets. There are no real weaknesses in black's camp. So one good piece for white, but that's the only real difference right now.
Yeah. And the black king is making its way to the centre sharpish. So, yeah, things are definitely looking like they're going to fizzle out.
What do you predict, Ivanka? A draw?
Yeah, a draw after several moves of Magnus trying.
Yeah. I think he will try. He does have the option as well of starting to push some pawns forward on that right side, on the king side, because, well, what else is there to do, frankly?
Well, if Magnus Carlsen was about to do something, maybe this is the moment, because it definitely seems Wesley So is distracted by his cat here. Yeah. So maybe Magnus could, well, he spent a lot of time on this move, make something super surprising and difficult for Wesley.
Yeah, that's the hope. And that's why Magnus Carlsen, he's thinking quite a long time on this move. He's been going for a minute and a half here because he's looking for that surprising move, looking for that way to imbalance things. At the moment, the pawn structure is completely symmetrical. Both sides have pawns, which, I mean, just playing copycat, essentially. And if you imagine the knight and bishop disappearing, the game is a dead draw. There's just no real imbalance left. And that's why Magnus, he knows he needs to seize the moment somehow and push forward. But how to do that without any risk?
And knowing also that Wesley keeps winning his white games, then that means Magnus needs to win his white games. So it's probably not an easy decision emotionally as well to just say, no, I'm going to go for a draw here.
Yeah.
Well, what does this move mean?
His last move with white shows that he's pushing forward. Okay, he's trying to be ambitious, Magnus Carlsen. Notice he's also shortened the diagonal of that black bishop even further. Black's bishop now is just staring at those the strongest pawn in the board. Black's bishop just hitting against a very well defended pawn. So the black bishop is a terrible piece. Magnus Carlsen also stepping forward with the white king. He's just positioning himself nicely, but the thing is there's no immediate follow-up. So we'll be looking for Magnus Carlsen to somehow create maybe another square for his knight, maybe create some imbalance on that right side. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it, Kaya. Not only is Wesley so super strong with white, but Magnus, he's been struggling in this tournament with black. He's lost several games against Daniel Dubov with black, several games against Maxim Vachier-Lagrave with black. Magnus, in this tournament at least, his black repertoire has looked a bit shaky. And yeah, I think starting off well here for white, with white, will be huge for the world champion. If he's unable to do that, he's going to be under pressure quite early on, I think.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, though, it is game one and early days, so...
Is it actually an advantage to start out with black in matches like this? That you can have a slow start and not sort of a need to win game already in the first one?
Yeah, I think it is an advantage to start with black because then you do know what you need to do with the white pieces. Because, yes, it's true that black always has the ability to surprise white, but white usually sets the scene. You know, is it going to be a solid game? Is it going to be risky, sharp? You name it, white can choose that. And... well, here you can see that Wesley is living up to his solid nickname and has advanced a pawn. But, you know, that pawn move, though it does gain space, it also has some consequences. And the consequence is now that there is a second square available to the white knight, or even a rook.
Yeah. Black's last move, pushing this pawn forward, has weakened squares, and this square now is very, very weak. White could potentially later on drop his knight back and try and reroute it into this square. You can imagine if some moves are made. This knight on an outpost, black never wants to capture this knight because suddenly this is a protected pass pawn. Look at this pawn chain for white. This is the ideal pawn structure pretty much, and black has isolated pawns which are very weak right now. So this is going to be a long-term goal of Magnus Carlsen. In the current position though, he's pushed forward all of white's pawns now, well, most of white's pawns on light squares. They're all on light squares pretty much. They are going to block out the effect of black's bishop. Black's bishop is going to have no targets for the rest of the game. But Magnus, he still needs to create a weakness in black's position. Wesley just shifting his rook across, just waiting there from Wesley. So,
I mean, would you be tempted, you know, because we did actually see Magnus do this, would you be tempted to sacrifice the rook and just go, you know what, I want the target, so I'm going to do that by radical means, and I'm going to put my rook onto a square defended by the black bishop, and my idea is I will then get my target and I'll then get control over squares. Because after all, that knight is stopping the rook from occupying the line anyway.
Yeah. Okay, we've seen Magnus push forward. If we bring up the board, we can show Jovanka's idea here. And I think we might see this, maybe not right now, but a bit later on, if black just waits. The idea would be to drop the rook in the middle of the board, sacrificing it for the black bishop. But suddenly this knight dominates the black rook, and black has a weak pawn here. So if Magnus Carlsen's playing for the win, he'll go for this a bit later on. But the answer, I think, unfortunately, Jovanka, is no, this isn't happening. If we catch up with the current position, we've seen a couple of rook trades and Magnus pushing forward. He's trying, though, still to win. He's trying to open lines up, finally, on this right side of the board. He's got a great knight. Black never wants to capture this knight here. It just improves white's pawn structure. But he still needs to open things up. And that's why we see Magnus Carlsen pushing on the right side. Meanwhile, Wesley, so retreating with the bishop. Mysterious move there. Yeah, Wesley's just waiting. He's sitting there. He's put his pawns on the best squares with black. And now he's just saying to Magnus, you try everything. I'm going to react. And Wesley not too worried. I liked your idea, Jovanka, of putting the rook in the middle of the board, but it would have been risky.
Yes.
There was definitely some risk attached. And I think maybe because it's that first game, Magnus doesn't want to take too much risk this early on.
So if you were to kind of categorize these two as football players, where would you put them?
Oof. The two players or the
Yeah.
two pieces?
Well, we're going to
pieces?
have Magnus's answer to that later.
Yeah.
Right. Magnus, a
Wesley So,
huge,
yeah.
huge football fan. Magnus Carlsen, so good at fancy football as well.
Yes.
I think he sees himself as a bit of a striker, maybe an attacking midfielder, number 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've played with him enough to know he thinks he's great in every position. He'll come back to the defence. He's a bit like a full-back or quarterback. He likes to sometimes drop deep, take the ball, and then dictate play. But Wesley, I see as maybe super solid centre-back. Who can occasionally get into the opponent's box and score some headers as well.
Yeah.
How would you say, like, box to box? I have to get these football terms in.
Maybe like a
midfielder.
Ramos.
Yes.
Sergio Ramos, maybe.
Okay.
Sergio Ramos,
But
defender.
not a dirty player, though. That sometimes Sergio Ramos
Okay.
would be.
I don't know my football players too.
I think he's got the most goals for a defender, Sergio Ramos, in the Spanish league, but also the most red cards.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, well, Magnus moving his rook on an open line. But we are asking everyone which famous athlete would be the best chess player. And again, we have some cool answers. Bag Yashri says, I just watched Nadal in the Australian Open. He plays chess on the tennis court already. He will be fantastic. And then...
Just what's happening? I just see Magnus reacting here to a few moves. Is it dramatic? What's happening now?
So Magnus, he's got his rook onto a great position with white, but I think he missed Wesley So's last move. Magnus Carlsen not looking very happy after Wesley So just pushing a pawn forward, and suddenly the white rook, it's kind of boxed in. It's attacking the black bishop, but that bishop's perfectly defended by the black king. Black also, meanwhile, has a threat. He's going to drop his black king back, attack the white rook. The white rook actually almost trapped unless it retreats. And then black's bishop is suddenly eyeing up pawns on white's left side of the board. Magnus Carlsen maybe just panicking slightly. He's still in control, but he has to be accurate now. Wesley So defending resolutely, and Magnus low on the clock. Maybe that's why he's panicking. He's inside. He's looking cool, but inside he's going to be thinking, I need to be quick. I need to be better and faster.
Yeah, but it's not easy, David.
It's
not easy. The king steps backwards. And now I think we're going to see Wesley on the counterattack because those weak pawns on the left, they're on light-coloured squares, and the bishop is pointing straight at them. And, Wesley is attacking the rook, and now Magnus must move that rook, and it's not easy to suggest a square. He's retreated the rook all the way back. And what is there to stop Wesley munching on pawns?
Yeah, white, I mean, it's not looking good for Magnus Carlsen. Just 2 moves ago, he brought his rook up the whole way to the top. And now, 2 moves later, he's had to retreat it the whole way back down. He's lost 2 moves, essentially. Wesley So, he can just play... maybe he can capture a pawn in the centre of the board first, but also he could play bishop takes pawn. One of white's pawns is just dropping off the board. Magnus is the one fighting for his life in this game. The computer still says 0.0. It still thinks white should draw, but once black wins a pawn, it's only black with his better bishop now who can win the game.
Yeah, but it's not just better bishop, it's also better rook. After the shenanigans there on the right side, I don't really know what Magnus is doing. I mean, I would be a little bit hesitant about grabbing the pawn on the right, on the left, because then the white rook can get mobilized. And, in endgames, it's not just about the quantity of pawns, it's also about the quality. And the further up the pawns are on the board, then the stronger they become. So I would be looking at doing everything in a harmonious way. And utilising my rook, maybe improving my king a little bit.
Yeah.
And then, when the time is right, get snacking.
Get snacking on these pawns, yeah. Wesley So, meanwhile, he's thinking. He knows there's been a small turnaround, at least psychologically, over the last few moves. Black was the one on the defensive. Now Magnus Carlsen will be the one suddenly on the defensive. And Wesley, can he adapt to that scenario to put pressure on the world champion? Maybe if there's one small criticism of Wesley in the past, at least, it was that he was happy with draws, especially with the black pieces against anyone. But against the world champion, it's small margins. You're going to have to take every tiny chance you can get. That's why Wesley So is thinking right now. He's just trying to work out the consequences of black grabbing a pawn and being a bit greedy. Magnus, yeah, he will have to somehow readjust. He did miss a move earlier, but it does look like he's
he has gone for it directly. So he's taken the pawn, and after a trade of pawns in the centre, the white rook has now gone and started attacking the bishop. So Wesley has to make a critical decision here. Do you capture the knight and try to hold on to your extra pawn, or do you just keep the bishop on the board?
Yeah, so black has two main options. I think black will either play bishop takes knight, or the black rook will drop itself down, give check to the white king. If Wesley So is feeling ambitious, he'll play bishop takes knight. But if he's heading for the draw, maybe he'll give check to the white king. And there's a way to give a few checks maybe in a row. And that would gain Wesley a bit of time on the clock, gaining 10 seconds after every move. Or maybe black can also force a draw immediately if he drops his rook down, giving check. That would be the safety first approach, I think, right now. Personally, I'd go for the rook check and then make the decision. Bishop takes knight, or will we see another check with black's rook? We see another check. The position, will it repeat itself? If black moves his rook back up one square, that's the second time we'll have seen that position. Wesley, if he's feeling ambitious, he can still play on. He can bring his rook across one square, give a different check. But at the moment, it does look like white's king, knight and rook are just too active. Magnus Carlsen being down a pawn, but he's got enough compensation.
So it's up to Wesley now to decide if he wants to agree to go into a repetition and a draw.
Yeah, it's up to Wesley, but just position-wise on the board and now also on the clock, 1 minute down, it does look like most sensible option for Wesley is to take that draw.
Well, David, he is taking your second advice, and now he's given a different check, and the king is sidestepped, and now the bishop has moved, and now, okay, we're going to see action again because Magnus now can capture the pawn, but so can Wesley.
Yeah, I mean, I love that decision, just playing on. While there's still pieces on the board, there's always still life. And Wesley So not showing any fear against the world champion. He's going for the win for black. He's still temporarily a pawn up with this last move. The bishop, the black bishop and the black rook are now eyeing up white's central pawn. So we'll see that, okay, Magnus Carlsen restores parity on the board. He gobbles up one pawn. Wesley So, meanwhile, takes one of white's pawns. And look at the black rook. It's now actually attacking both of white's remaining pawns. So Magnus Carlsen should be able to hold this because lots of pieces, pawns are disappearing off the board. But yeah, it's still white who's got to force the draw. The pressure's still on him to show that he can hold this game.
So he's not going to win this game. It's not possible for white.
Barring a miracle or blunder, white will not win this game.
And in fact, one natural move in this position, maybe if we can bring up the board and show it, is if white were to attack the bishop.
With the rook?
With the rook, down.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't quite matter. It doesn't matter where you attack. But say you just, Okay, so now it's possible for black to actually take a pawn.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay. And if rook takes bishop, there would be a nasty double attack here. And this is the kind of stuff white has to watch out for. That's why he didn't go for this option. That's very nice, actually, Ivanka. I missed that.
It should be the other pawn, but never mind. Yeah.
Oh, okay. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Either way, but if we catch up with the game, right now, we've seen Magnus Carlsen. He has lost his pawn on the side of the board. So Magnus now 2 pawns down, but he has improved his knight. His knight is slightly more centralized now, at least guarding one pawn. And it's white who can decide which pawn to grab right now. We might see a scenario of black having only one extra pawn, and that should not be enough to win the game. The way black will win this, if he can, is to somehow get this pawn rolling down the board because it ends up on a light square, and that will be supported by his bishop. It's not going to be easy. Magnus just deciding now. Personally, I'd capture maybe this pawn just to have some of my own play down this side of the board. But Magnus, he's got 2 pawns to choose from. Which will he take? He should hold the draw, but still pressure on him.
I would follow your advice. Take the pawn, which is protecting your own pawn, and just keep the game double-edged. Why not?
Yeah, you predict correctly, Ivanka.
Yeah, well...
now, he's taken one pawn. He's also eyeing up this pawn. Black now kicking away the white knight. This knight needs to find a square. There are traps in the position. If you move to the wrong square, maybe you'll end up getting attacked. Maybe a double attack here. This might be okay for white, but you definitely don't want to allow any tricks in this position. So Magnus Carlsen, he is the one still on the defensive. We see him leaning in. He knows he needs to be super accurate to hold this game with white.
All right. Pressure's on for Magnus Carlsen, and his clock's ticking down to 1 minute.
Yeah.
And we know what happens when the players reach under 1 minute. That is when panic starts to set in. You have to be a super cool customer not to feel any kind of pressure whatsoever when your clock is ticking down to the seconds.
Yeah, and white's knight has actually just put itself on pretty much a horrible square, but it's heading to somewhere better. That's the most important thing. Well, white's knight dropping itself to the edge of the board. We normally hate that. Also the same color as the white king, so it might potentially be open to a double attack by black's bishop. But the knight is heading to a centralized square, and Wesley So with his last move, attacking the white knight, attacking that pawn, the remaining white pawn, but white's knight now centralizing itself to a great square. And Magnus Carlsen, it does look like he's found a way to hold this game. He's put his knight on a far better square now. White's pawn will drop off at the edge of the board, but black's central pawn is ripe for the picking, and it's checked right now. White's king will simply retreat, and Wesley So he can't hold both of his pawns. To win here, you normally need 2 extra pawns in this type of position. Wesley So he only has 1 extra pawn, and okay.
Yes.
1 pawn on its own will not be enough.
No, it's not enough, and you can see there's been a whole series of trades, and that is it. Knight and king versus bishop and king, and the game will just fizzle out to king versus king, and that is a draw. So, wow. Tense battle to begin with.
Slow start to the final between Magnus Carlsen and Wesley So. Magnus Carlsen with the white pieces. He definitely wanted a win in his first game, but it is a draw and a slow start to the final. All right. Well, it is Wesley So. He's got now 15 minutes to prepare for his first white game. We do know that a lot of the games end up with wins for the person with white between these two. So, Magnus, do you think he's especially prepared for these games with the black pieces, Jovanka?
Yeah, I think he has to be prepared for them because he has been struggling, against Dubov and against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave on the second day. That was his Achilles heel. So he definitely has to be ready and willing to fight because Wesley is now going to turn on the heat and play some very sharp stuff.
But it was a cool start for both of them, David. You said from the beginning this is looking very drawish. At some point, though, I don't know if it was Wesley who made the move or Magnus made the move, but you said, OK, now it's interesting and it could be good for Wesley. What happened there?
Yep, it almost turned around at one point. Wesley So seizing the moment and going for the win. And that all started, we saw it on Magnus Carlsen's face, with a bit of a mysterious move. I wouldn't say a blunder, just an inaccurate move by Magnus Carlsen. The white rook looking pretty on this open line. It did end up bringing itself up to the top of the board, attacking black's pawn, but maybe Magnus Carlsen just missed the fact that the pawn would move forward. This rook now is redundant. It has no... it simply has nothing to do on this square. And we saw a couple of moves later, after white pushed forward, the black king stepped back, attacking this rook. This rook was forced to retreat the whole way back. So Magnus Carlsen losing 2 moves for free. And Wesley So now suddenly grabbing a pawn and going a pawn up. Black's bishop also becoming far better than it's been for the previous part of the game. Wesley So, he was the only one who could win here. We saw a few moves later, white attacked this bishop and black's rook suddenly dropping down into the game. Wesley So, he had the option to draw here. He could have gone for a repetition of moves by bringing his rook up. He played for the win by bringing his rook across. He got close, but not quite close enough. Magnus Carlsen just stepping into reverse gear and holding the draw. But Wesley So, he'll be very happy with the way the first game went.
They are tied after 1 game in the final in the Opera Euro Rapid. And we do know Wesley So with the white pieces in the next one. He is fierce with the white pieces. So Magnus Carlsen, he needs to shape up. All right, it's a bit of a slow start to the final, but we know what happens after slow starts, Jovanka. Storm.
Exactly. I mean, it's like it's building up to that final moment. Yeah, definitely, Kaya. I think we're going to see fireworks. I mean, we've seen it before from their match in the Skilling Open. So I really wouldn't be surprised if Wesley turns on the heat and starts scoring.
Well, scoring, you said it, Jovanka. We're talking about football and sports today as well, David. And you have mentioned it. Magnus Carlsen, he's super interested in especially football, Fantasy Premier League. Oh, can you tell us, what is Fantasy Premier League that we keep hearing about?
Yeah, so Fantasy Premier League, it's a very addictive game where you choose a team of players and you just try to predict who's in the best form, who will score the most goals, which defenders will help to keep a clean sheet. You pick your ideal players for those positions. And Magnus Carlsen, he's one of the best in the world at fantasy football. He actually topped the rankings. I think there were 7 million players.
8 million.
8 million. And he was number 1 last season for a while. He's not just a chess player, Magnus Carlsen.
This is the current Fantasy Premier League team, actually, that we just saw for Magnus Carlsen. He is right now number, I think, 30,000 in the world this season, but still that is amazing with 8 million players. Okay, but he is a chess player first and foremost. And we did have this idea. Our reporter Askild Bryn had this idea to ask Magnus about what would be his fantasy chess team. So choosing chess players, current or historical chess players in a football formation. And we're going to start with the first one, and that's going to be about defense.
Welcome to Askild Asking. Magnus, we know you're a big fan of the fantasy Premier League football. We have a challenge for you. We want you to combine your love for chess with your interest for fantasy.
I'll go with 3-4-3.
The keeper should also be super solid, right?
Yeah, the keeper. I think we will put a contemporary player in goal. We will put Mr. Adishkiri.
Okay, yeah.
He's a good player who rarely loses, but he also doesn't win enough games or tournaments to warrant a place in the outfield. An obvious choice there at the back. I will go for Tigran Petrosyan, the former world champion, who he's going to get you a lot of clean sheets. He will get you some attacking returns as well. So I feel like he's an obvious choice. I will also go with a less obvious choice there, which is Mikhail Tal.
Okay, in the defense?
Which seems a little bit counterintuitive, but the thing is that in the later part of his career, he had 2 of the longest unbeaten streaks of all time. Very decent security there at the back, while also providing quite a lot of attacking. And then, of course, we have another famous, almost invincible player who is Capablanca. Rarely ever lost games, and he seems like the perfect defense guy.
Okay, very good. So now we have the keeper and 3 in the back. Thank you. Catch you later.
So now we know what players Magnus would keep in defense in terms of chess players and their styles. And we have a very exciting guest that we're bringing on right now. His name is Andreas Sandbu, and he is a friend, a former, actually, football teammate of Magnus Carlsen. Andreas, hi.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. We did see, I don't know if you saw it, we did see Magnus picking out his fantasy defense chess team. Yeah. And I know you're a big chess fan as well. What did you think of his choices here?
Yeah, I think he knows the chess players a lot better than me. So I guess I'm not in a position to really question his choices, but it seems good. Solid defense and good reasoning for the choices.
And Andreas, so you are, I mentioned, you are a former teammate and also actually the coach for Magnus Carlsen in a team in Oslo. You guys called yourself, was it Fremad Famagusta, I think?
Yeah, correct.
And we do know, we've seen Magnus when he's playing chess there, a lot of emotions. What was he like when he played football?
Well, to start with emotions, I'm pretty happy that he's not as emotional in football as he is in chess, at least after the games.
Yeah, here we see. So I think this is some footage from when this team, Fremad Famagusta, you won a game and you actually went up a league, is that correct?
Yeah, it was in 2014. We got promoted from the 7th level to the 6th level in the Norwegian pyramid league.
Wow. And how important,
so that was amazing.
How important was Magnus for you to have that achievement on the football pitch?
It's of course important. We are a group of maybe a bit too few players, so we are dependent on everyone to contribute and play. So it's important, of course.
And I think this was like right after he won one of his world championship titles. So he sort of went straight from that to play football with you guys.
Yeah, it is. I think it's a month or so before his 2nd world title.
Wow. And then, okay, so what position was Magnus on the football field? What sort of his strengths?
I heard David say that Magnus would love to see himself as a classic number 10. To be honest with you, his skill set might not be that of a classic number 10. He's a hard worker. He's aggressive. He runs a lot. He likes to tackle. He's got a good cross and good passer of the ball. We have deployed him mostly as left fullback or left side of the midfield. He's a good player, but his style-wise, he's not a Maradona or a Francesco Totti. He's maybe more like Marcelo, Andy Robertson, or maybe he's compared to John Ruiz, I guess. I'm sorry, Magnus.
Maybe it's just compared to me or most chess players that he looks like Maradona on the football pitch.
Well, but okay, you've also been a football coach, Andreas, for this team with Magnus. Is there anything like relatable playing football, maybe the way you see the field, and chess, where we know Magnus is the best in the world?
Yeah, you hear a lot of times football experts, commentators, they often compare those tactical football games to a match of chess. I think at our level, it's our football matches is just as comparable to roulette. I think you just start to play, close your eyes and hope for the best. But at the top level, of course, there's a lot of trying to figure out your opponent's next move and try to analyze play and counterplay and that kind of dimension of the game. So, yeah, I guess football has some comparable traits to chess, but I think a lot of team sports do. So I don't think it's specific to football.
And you are a friend of Magnus. You mentioned the teammate. I'm really curious. So when you meet up with Magnus, is it like only chess and football he wants to talk about all the time?
No, it isn't. And I think we very rarely speak about chess, because for Magnus to talk to me about chess, at least the game and the positions and the moves, it must be the most boring thing for him, because the difference in level is so huge that it must be like talking to a toddler or something like that. So we don't talk about chess that much. Of course, we talk about stories around chess, and we talk a lot about football. We watch football games together from time to time, but of course we talk about other stuff as well, as all friends do. What's happening, experiences, other people, politics, different stuff.
So he's a normal guy then, I guess.
Yeah. Really.
Well, as chess players, we fancy ourselves as deep statisticians. Is Magnus in charge of the team strategy?
No.
Well, there you go.
Even if he's so good in fantasy football as well.
Yeah, maybe we should give him some responsibility for tactics as well.
Yeah.
Of course, he's a great tactician in chess and fantasy football as well, so might be could do a very good job.
And Andreas, I've watched a football match actually with you, and I know how passionate you are about sport. We do have a quiz question of today, and we are asking which athletes you think would make great chess players. Do you have an answer there?
I thought about that, and of course it's a difficult question. But I think to be a great chess player, you have to be calm. You have to be patient. You also have to have this accuracy. You have to be pinpoint accurate, and also to be a bit daring. I think a sport where you have to have these skills is snooker. And the most spectacular snooker player ever, and probably the best player ever, who also mix in some kind of nice aggression, is Rocket Ronnie O'Sullivan. I do not know if he even knows the rules of chess, but as a personality and skill set, it would be interesting to see.
Yeah, I met him once. He's a cool guy. And
Wow.
I think Steve Davis, former snooker player, he's very passionate about chess. So, maybe some similarities between the two sports.
Well,
maybe.
Great answer then, Andreas, and such a great time to have you on board here. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us a little bit of insight on Magnus behind the chess and just in the normal life.
Thank you. Pleasure is mine. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
All right, that was cool. I like that, hearing about when Magnus is on the football pitch and just when he's hanging out with his friends. And a very good answer, I thought. from Andreas there about our quiz of the day.
Yes, I didn't think about snooker players, but I mean, it does make sense. You know, David mentioned Steve Davis, and I know he was the president of the English Chess Federation because he was super interested in chess. And what made me laugh, though, from Andreas's interview was the fact that, you know, we really do fancy ourselves as excellent at strategy. And just to hear that, nope, no way is Magnus in charge of team strategy is super interesting to me.
All right. It's starting. Game 2 in the final between Magnus Carlsen and Wesley So. We're going to head right into that. I think it's only seconds away from starting with Wesley So having the white pieces. Magnus Carlsen sitting down. He didn't get that win in the first game with the white pieces. And we do know Wesley So, he's going to try to get that win with the white pieces here, David.
Yep, definitely Wesley So. He always feels more comfortable, especially against the top players in the world, when he has white. Wesley, he can serve with both hands. That's what we say. He can play any type of opening. So what will he have in store for the world champion? He does open the game with his king's pawn. Magnus replies also with his king's pawn. So a bit of symmetry here at this early stage. Will we see Wesley So? Okay, he plays an opening called the Italian game. This one, both sides are supreme experts in this opening. Both sides play this position. Okay, we're going for super aggressive play by Wesley So. I was about to say it's going to lead to a long strategic maneuvering game, but no. White has gone straight on the attack. White has actually won a pawn. We called this the fried liver attack. At least what White was trying to do is the fried liver attack. And now White is a pawn up. Had to retreat a bishop there, but look at this. This is crazy. Black has a knight on the edge of the board. White has a knight in Black's half. White already a pawn up. Anything can happen here. It tends to end up quite chaotic, these type of positions.
Are you tricking us like Simon the other day, talking about chess and fishing the book, and you bringing up an opening called fried liver?
It's true. It is true, fried liver. And we do have some really weird names for openings. That's not the worst one, actually.
Ooh, what is the worst one?
The monkey.
The monkey's bum
The
opening.
monkey's bum.
There's also the Frankenstein Dracula attack.
Yeah, and the Halloween gambit, yeah.
Okay, meanwhile, play, it's normalized slightly, but wow, look at that. Magnus Carlsen giving up a second pawn. Magnus Carlsen, both sides going on the attack here. Magnus Carlsen pushing forward his pawns on that right-hand side in front of his own black king. Magnus wants to attack here. He's given up 2 pawns to do that. But the thing is, I think I've seen Wesley So win with this opening before as white. So I'm a bit worried.
Yeah, he's played it before.
He's played it and won it.
Yes.
Yes. And I remember Wesley So in that game before, he came up with a really brand new idea to win. And wow, Wesley So, he's just sacrificed a knight. Both players have done their homework here. This is so much
does it
action
seem
already.
that Magnus has also looked at that game that Wesley played and won?
He must have done. Surely, I mean, he's a world champion. He had to have done his research. The thing is, Wesley So, he's played this so quickly, so confidently. Right now, White has given up a piece. White sacrificed a knight, in return getting 3 pawns. That being said, anything could happen here. Black's king is actually pretty open right now. Black's knight on that left side of the board as well. It's pretty offside. It's not defended. White's queen, very nicely placed. Well, both of Black's knights are huge targets. Personally, I love this opening, this position, at least for White. Despite what the computer says Black has a small advantage, but Magnus Carlsen, he's stopped to think now, which is not a good sign.
So if this was a football game, would it be like 5 minutes into the game, we already have 2 red cards and a penalty that was missed and just...
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It's still equal score, but everything's happened already.
Yeah.
Wow, amazing. Wesley So bringing his A game and his showman to the final here.
Look at that. Wesley So, he's now got almost 3 minutes more than he started the game with.
Yeah.
He's played every move instantly, and look at Magnus Carlsen's face.
Yeah, he's desperately trying to remember something, and it's not a good omen when you play what you think is a super sharp opening. You are well prepared, and then your opponent does this to you. Yeah, bad news for Magnus.
And he looks so confident there, Wesley So. Just a small little smile on his face, very relaxed, as Magnus Carlsen is desperately, you said it, David, trying to calculate and remember.
Yeah, and I know that when I looked at Wesley So's game previously in this opening, I was super impressed. Wesley So's opening preparation went very deep. He went very far into the game. He pretty much won that previous game purely on the back of his own preparation, his own research with White. And Magnus Carlsen, the fact that he's slowed down, that he's thinking, means maybe he's just a bit less well prepared here. Maybe his coaches didn't predict this with him in advance. We see Magnus closing his eyes. He's not unhappy. He's just trying to recall stuff. And that's always a double-edged sword in rapid chess. You don't have enough time to sit there and just try and pull back that memory and work out what's going to happen over the next 10 moves. You need to be 100% sure. You need to know things in advance.
Yeah.
This is, especially in such a crazy position like
this is just an insane position, so you absolutely do need to know absolutely everything in the position. And, yeah, I'm very worried that Magnus is struggling to recall the theory. But, you know, OK, you've got to be practical. If you can't remember what you have to do, you have to just work it out over the board.
Should he start freestyling now? We know Magnus, his intuition is amazing.
Yeah.
Should he start now trusting that and just forget about trying so hard to remember?
The problem is that this position isn't so much intuition, it's more about brute force. You know, you just have to calculate. And the first thing you have to address with the black pieces is what are you going to do about the knight that is under attack? That is under attack all the way on the left side of the board. So you have to move it, or if you're not moving it, you have to come up with some kind of counterplay.
Yeah, and if we bring up the analysis board, we can see why Magnus is thinking right now. He does have this huge problem of this knight. It's offside, it's not defended, it's currently being attacked as well. So when in doubt, just retreat a piece. This would be a very sensible move for Magnus Carlsen. That being said, the knight is on a terrible square right now. I have a feeling Wesley So would continue attacking, pushing forward, kicking this bishop back. He would bring his other bishop forward. There's some ideas now potentially against Black's king. The reason Magnus Carlsen is thinking here is, OK, he plays this move eventually. I would think he was debating whether to sacrifice that knight and go on the counterattack. But he said, no, safety first. It's better to just keep my pieces intact and try and weather the storm, try and defend. The reason I prefer White's position here, though, is because, yes, he's got a knight less, but look at these two central pawns, super strong. The Black king as well, lacking protection. So if White can somehow, for example, in that variation I mentioned, start bringing his pieces towards the Black king, Black is the one on the defensive at this early stage. And, let's see whether Wesley So has prepared for that last move, that knight retreat.
Yeah, I mean, he just looks like he's in calculation mode. So I absolutely think this is definitely in preparation. I mean, you do not go into a position a piece down without knowing how to continue an attack. So I do think Wesley is just in recall mode, and we're going to see a flurry of moves. So Wesley, what kind of football player would he have to be now?
Yeah, I mean, I know I said centre-back earlier, that strong centre-back, but the way he's playing in this game, he's maybe a flamboyant winger, I don't know. He's showing off all those tricks, those step-overs, those skills. But he still needs that finishing technique. And
Well, actually, we have another video with Magnus Carlsen talking about his fantasy chess team. The next one that we'll have after this game is about midfield. And I can just have a little teaser about Wesley So almost making the team for Magnus Carlsen. Yeah. This was obviously recorded before the tournament, before Magnus knew he would face Wesley So in the final.
Yeah, we do have a sporting theme throughout the day because we are also asking everyone at home which athlete would be the best chess player. You can tweet your answers using the hashtag #ChessChamps. And one answer I think, Kaya, you will like, but not sure everyone will be happy in the studio, because Mr. Dodgy says, which athlete would make the best chess player? Clearly, it's famous Norwegian skier, David Howell.
Mr. Dodgy, I will get my revenge.
That is a genius answer, actually. Yeah. And, you did ski with athlete, former Olympic gold medalist Aksel Lund Svindal. Yeah. He did play chess against Magnus Carlsen. It wasn't... maybe we wouldn't choose him for best chess player. He did struggle quite a bit.
He was quite new to the game, and he survived a long time.
He improved a lot in a short amount of time.
Exactly. Like, I mean, I had a 1-hour chess lesson with him, and from the start to the end, he'd improved massively. And
that's true.
I'm pretty sure if he put his mind to it, he could be a decent chess player.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that there's a lot of things to link sports and chess. I mean, after all, chess as a category is actually quite difficult to kind of quantify. You know, there's this big discussion. What is it? Is it an art? Is it a sport? Right. Is it a science? Is it whatever? And I mean, it has qualities of absolutely everything. So it doesn't surprise me that athletes make good chess players.
Well, and this game, is this simply a sports game of chess, David, with the way that Wesley has just given Magnus a lot of problems here.
Yeah, it's a bit of everything. I mean, it's going to heat up into definitely a bit of a sporting battle. But the initial stages were quite scientific from Wesley. He'd clearly done that preparation with the computers. He'd analysed all of the opponent's possible replies. He'd kind of narrowed down the options. And it could also still end up as a bit of a masterpiece, an art form, a work of art. Because Wesley So, if he does finish off this game, I mean, that's the most satisfying way to win in chess, to sacrifice a piece, to go on the attack. And meanwhile, we see Wesley So, he does do that. He pushes his pawns on that left flank. And look at the knight. We mentioned earlier it was on the edge of the board. It's retreated, but that black knight is now pretty much trapped. There is an offer of a pawn in the centre of the board right now. And will Magnus Carlsen capture it? If we bring up the board, we can see Magnus Carlsen right now, he's going to be debating two very tempting moves. He's going to be debating whether to capture this pawn with his knight or with his queen. There are flaws to both of those moves, however, I think. If he captures with the knight, suddenly the white bishop will appear on this diagonal, and look at this, a bit of a pin. The queen, the white queen and the white bishop, using teamwork, they're going to create chaos along that diagonal. If meanwhile, Magnus Carlsen captures with the queen, he will get punished. We'll see a queen trade, white's bishop will jump out, check, the black king has to move, and suddenly, look at this, two bishops along the two diagonals, creating this kind of laser effect even, and yeah, white simply is winning. So Magnus Carlsen, greed is not good in this position. He cannot capture this pawn with his queen or his knight. I expect him maybe to start freeing up his pieces. He needs to get these ones in the game, and one way to do that would be to push his pawn forward and get his rook active along this line. There's so many options, though, so much to work out in advance for Magnus Carlsen, and lots of traps for him to avoid at this early stage.
Yeah, and very unpleasant, because Wesley's last move doesn't look entirely natural to me. I mean, I very much expected the bishop to come out, attacking the knight, just as you suggested. And it's very unpleasant that you expect that move, and then something else comes on the board, and you're like, oh, OK. Well, OK, back to the drawing board. And I agree with you. That pawn in the middle is just too hot to take. You cannot grab that one. Yeah, I mean, your king, the thing is, though, black's king is totally open, and you just cannot let it get exposed even more, and you certainly cannot let any of white's pieces come close. How would you start repairing the position as black?
You asked the toughest questions.
I mean, it is. I mean, because I couldn't clearly see something to do. It's a super tricky position to handle with just 10 minutes on the clock.
I think with 10 minutes left, I would rather, instead of trying to repair the position, I'd rather build my own time machine and go back and play a different opening, because this position is just so scary for black, for Magnus Carlsen. And yeah, I mean, despite having that extra knight, black's piece is just really bad. His king is exposed along those diagonals that we mentioned. And yeah, I mean, it doesn't help being 4 minutes down on the clock as well, when your opponent is clearly much more familiar with the position than you are.
3 minutes now for Magnus Carlsen, and he does make that move that you mentioned, David.
Yeah, I think it's the best move. So Magnus Carlsen finding a good move in that position, and Wesley, this is just pure preparation. He's definitely seen this position before, I reckon, pushing forward with his pawn, not allowing the black rook to open itself up along that line. That's very instructive, what Wesley So has done. And another instructive point, I think, was kind of on the same line as Ivankun was saying. We expected him to bring out his light-squared bishop, Wesley So, with white, to try and target the black king. But sometimes keeping an idea in store for later is much more unpleasant for the opponent than using it immediately. If you use it immediately, your opponent can defend, and they'll be able to predict things in advance. Now, Magnus Carlsen always has to worry about the threat, bringing that bishop out. The threat is stronger than the execution. And white's keeping everything in reserve. White's pieces, a lot of them are the bottom rank there, but they're ready to spring into action, whereas black's pieces...
Yeah, and in fact,
clumsy, right?
There's actually only one move, I think, to hold the balance, and that is just to capture the pawn. If we bring up the board, because if you were to make any move, just say you were to develop the bishop, let's show the problem. Well, white will simply play pawn takes pawn, and after bishop takes pawn, now the white pawn would go forward in the centre, and the bishop and the knight would be forked. And the point is that after queen takes queen, knight takes queen, and it just so unpleasant for for Wesley. In fact, the only move is just to capture the pawn.
Yeah, so the only move Magnus Carlsen can play to stay in this game is to just capture this pawn. It's quite a natural one, so I would expect him to find it, but any other move, and pretty much black is busted. Black is lost immediately. So he has to play pawn takes pawn and hope for the best. White's bishop will jump forward and recapture, and black still has a problem. All these bad pieces. Wow, he doesn't find the move.
Find it. And
he doesn't find it.
Wesley So.
He doesn't.
Oh, no.
Yeah, Magnus Carlsen capturing this pawn, but we said it was poisoned pretty much. Queen takes queen. Now, why can't Wesley So just bring out his bishop, create a pin here?
He's going to bring out the bishop, and
Wesley So is pretty much winning.
That's a critical idea.
Wow, super dramatic. And game 2 in the first final match between these two. The first one ended with a draw. We knew Wesley So would come up with something fantastic with the white pieces. Yep. And he certainly has.
Yeah, Wesley So playing like a genius. And this, I mean, he's so good with his research, his opening preparation. That's why players hate to play Wesley So. He's actually one of the most feared players on the world scene right now because it's just hard to survive the opening against him. I mean, of course, he's a fantastic middle game player. He's great in the end game too, but the opening stage, he's so good and so deadly. And Magnus Carlsen, it just feels like he's walked into this kind of...
He walked into the snake pit, didn't he?
Exactly.
No, I mean, the bishop will just come out and that's it.
Yeah, I think the best Magnus Carlsen can hope for now is to just give back a piece. If White's bishop brings itself out, as we mentioned, Magnus Carlsen, he'll lose a piece back, but he just has to maybe give that piece away and try and survive with the queens off the board. It's not going to be easy. Wesley So will probably just be a pawn up, maybe even 2 pawns up for not enough compensation. I don't think Magnus Carlsen realizes what he's just done with his last move. It's not the most obvious move. That's the saving grace for Magnus Carlsen. There's a lot of tempting options here for White. He could play pawn takes pawn. He could maybe trade the queens. But if he brings his bishop out, it's looking good for Wesley. Will he find that move?
But after 22 moves, Wesley So has played so fast up till now. He takes a long pause now to think. 2 minutes going up to that now. So does that mean that he's finally out of everything he remembers and now he too is freestyling it?
Yeah, I think the reason Wesley So has paused is because probably up until that last move, he's looked at this position with the computer, but he will have looked at the 2 best computer moves maybe and figured out what to do there. But he will know that Magnus did not play one of the best moves. That is why he's paused for thought now. He's thinking, okay, the computer didn't like that move. Let's work out why. And he'll sense this is a critical moment, a key moment. If Wesley isn't accurate, then black will survive. So that's why he's spending his time. He's going to try and find, simply the path to punish Magnus Carlsen's last move. Wesley So, he does have the luxury of a lot of time to spend, at least. And he's doing the right thing. He's just trying to knuckle down and work things out.
Yeah.
What do you think, Ivanka? Will he find that move, bringing his bishop out now?
Yeah, for sure, 100%. I think he's just calmly... to me, it seemed like when he saw Magnus's move, he took some time out just to calm himself down and not get overexcited and just play the winning idea. Because, I mean, you have to do that. I don't see any other option other than bringing the bishop out. So this is, if we bring out the analysis board, we should show what we expect. So I would expect something like bishop comes out to attack that knight. And now if black were to play, just say queen takes queen, knight takes queen, and black goes, well, that's fine because I can just simply go knight takes pawn. Capturing the knight, defending the other knight. What's the problem? Well, the problem is that white will now come out on the edge with the bishop and attack that knight. And suddenly you see these amazing potential of those bishops. And now the threat is simply to pick up the light squared bishop and capture that knight. And there is just no good. The other one.
Well, I think this is a bigger threat right now.
Oh, Ivanka, sorry. You're completely right. In this particular position, in my mind, I was moving the king.
If black's king moves, that's right. White will capture the other knight maybe, and at the very end, he'll capture this rook. Black simply just getting destroyed along these 2 diagonals. Look at these 2 white bishops. They're beautiful pieces, these 2 right now. They're just controlling everything. And
Death by bishops.
Death by bishops. Will Magnus Carlsen face that death? Will he have to suffer in this position when there's is simply no good move for black? Or will he, what else to do? Or will he somehow get a lucky escape, a reprieve if Wesley So misses this idea? You do have to look 2-3 moves in advance, I guess, for Wesley. So maybe slightly further advance if you want to get to the truth of that position. That's why he's spending his time now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because it could look misleading. You could just stop after the knight captures the pawn and just go, well, OK, that's it. The knights protect each other. But if you go one move deeper, then you'll see, yes, Black is totally tangled up. And, you can just see that Magnus knows that he is in serious, serious trouble. Meanwhile, Wesley is just very calm. I mean, this is one of the beautiful things I like about chess is that, you know, both players have access to the board. Nothing is hidden, you know, everything that Wesley sees, Magnus sees as well. Oh, okay. Well, wait 1 second. Is this...
What's happening?
Wesley So has... he's just slipped up. He's blundered. And he missed his winning move.
And he knows it.
Look at Wesley So. Wow, he missed this last move, Wesley. So Black's bishop now blocking the checks, and we will see a couple of trades, and suddenly White is the one in trouble. Magnus Carlsen, he will have seen this in advance. He played his move instantly. Wesley So leaning back. He just did not spot this idea from Magnus Carlsen. Magnus Carlsen giving back a piece, and Black should be winning now. If maybe we can bring up the board while keeping an eye on the players' faces, because suddenly Magnus Carlsen, we did see him suddenly put his head in his hands. He realised he was losing, but he got lucky. And this move, bringing the bishop out, this is what Wesley So missed. Black bringing a bishop out, sacrificing his bishop back. But if White gets greedy and takes back the piece, we see at the very end, Black's knight springs forward, attacking this rook. If the rook, it just simply has no good squares. If it captures this pawn, then the issue is, look at this rook in the corner. It's been at home the whole game, and suddenly it's trapped. Black is winning. No matter where the rook goes, if it retreats, he will get attacked, and suddenly there's issues. All of White's pieces, look at the quality. They're all asleep on their start squares. This king out on its own, and there's 2 threats now for Black. There's checkmate coming down and trapping the White king, or there's checkmate to the rook, even bringing the bishop and winning the White rook. Suddenly Wesley So he's going to get attacked, and Magnus Carlsen, he's the one turning the position in his favour.
Wow. So Magnus Carlsen could now be winning this game. Wesley So losing. Yeah.
Turnaround just in one move. We did say, Jovanka said 100% Wesley will find it. I would have said pretty much the same. If you'd asked me, I thought Wesley, he was odds on to find it. But sometimes the problem with knowing things too well in the opening is that as soon as you're surprised, it takes you a while to react. Wesley played, 22 moves pretty much instantly. And then as soon as he was on his own, he went for the wrong option. And this one was tempting, but there was a hidden defensive idea for Black.
Yeah, and that's a kind of a painful missed opportunity. And there we are. We're looking at Magnus Carlsen's air quality, and you can see that... it's not great air quality, is it? You know, the CO2 levels are on amber, and his problem with humidity, 15.5%. The temperature's good.
Temperature's good. Magnus Carlsen, the whole event, his humidity's been slightly off from what it should be, but the CO2 levels may be worse than they have been all tournament, actually, for Magnus, but will that come back to affect him later in the day? Meanwhile, Wesley, that's actually pretty much perfect air quality, just the temperature. Slightly cold there in Minnesota.
17 degrees.
I did actually see a tweet. Someone sitting in Minnesota and saying it was very cold there right now. So these two players, both sitting in cold temperatures, Oslo and Minnesota, both below 0, I bet.
Yeah, and we did see your tweet from Wesley yesterday, I think, holding the Airthings device, and in the background there was a whole lot of snow. Yeah.
But are they keeping cool in their heads? Well, I must say Magnus Carlsen seems to have done that in a very hard game so far. Yeah. Keeping cool and suddenly maybe being the winner of this game.
Yeah. He still has to be accurate, though. Black here, I think, has to play knight takes pawn right now to kind of press home his advantage. That's why Magnus Carlsen, again, he's not unhappy right now. When he puts his head in his hands, he is purely calculating or remembering things. Here, he's calculating. He's just looking ahead 4 or 5 moves, trying to make sure that Black has the advantage. He knows this is still a key moment. Both these players, they're ice cold when they need to be. They're cold-blooded when they calculate, when they look for those winning opportunities. But Magnus, meanwhile, he survived the worst, essentially, as Black. And
Yeah, you're right, David. He has to find one correct move here. Otherwise, I think the position is level. He has to probably find knight takes pawn.
yeah, I think it's the most natural move in the position.
I agree, because you're capturing a pawn, you're attacking the rook, and if the rook moves to the wrong place, well, hello, there's a lovely diagonal for the bishop.
Yeah, Magnus Carlsen, he's spending a long time here, which is slightly puzzling, because Black's knight capturing a pawn and attacking a rook at the same time just looks so good and so simple. Magnus, meanwhile, maybe looking even deeper into the position, just double checking everything, making sure. I think this is a good moment to spend time for Magnus, because we just had that turnaround, that flurry of moves. But if he ticks under 5 minutes and still isn't completely sure of the consequences, then Wesley will start to get hope again.
Well, Wesley, it just seems so unlike him to blunder.
Yeah, it's once in a
Do
year.
you think it's the nerves of the final getting to him?
Yeah, and maybe overexcitement, just the fact he knew he had such a great position. He knew that Magnus had walked into his opening trap, walked straight into this kind of prepared idea, and maybe Wesley just knowing he needed to punish Magnus, but trying to do it in the wrong way. Wesley, though, he's quite good at readjusting. He's quite good at just brushing off the mistakes, and we saw it in the Skilling Open. On the first day, he twice went behind to Magnus. He brushed it off and managed to win the next game. So still some chances for Wesley to fight back.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is one of the reasons, actually, well, just by looking at Wesley's mistake, is that this is why we do this whole system of checks, captures, attacks. Make that list. If you make that list, you won't kind of be so fixated of just calculating one line and just getting obsessed with that. If you make the list and then choose, then you can kind of at least have some kind of concept as to what moves are available. But it's very difficult to do, actually. In the heat of the moment, it's difficult to suddenly go, wait 1 second here, work through those moves. I mean, most of the time you're just like, oh, I win, play.
Yeah.
And
you think that's what Wesley did in this game?
Yeah,
Probably.
maybe. I mean, he's an amazing player, though. I think he just made the assumption that the knight had to retreat.
Yeah, he definitely made that assumption, and maybe that's the big difference as well between classical chess and rapid chess. Classical chess, when you have a couple of hours per game, okay, meanwhile, Magnus finds the best move. But yeah, classical chess, you have that time to sit there, sit on your hands, calculate everything out to the end, look for alternatives. But here, Wesley, he thought he saw a winning idea. He went for it, but he missed Black's best response. If he'd stopped and gone right back to the beginning, looked for his own ideas, he would have won. And
the bar shoots up with this move by Wesley. Is it another small mistake by him?
Small mistake. The problem is everything was pretty bad right there. There were no good moves, and he's trying to play the move which makes the position kind of survivable at least. But I think now if Magnus Carlsen finds the move, I was going to say, I showed it earlier, bringing the rook across, offering this rook trade. Look at all of White's pieces. Black is trying to trade off the only white piece which is actually moved, pretty much. And if we see a rook trade now, Black is simply winning. White's king, we talk about back rank checkmates quite a lot, but White's king is completely trapped on its back rank. White's other rook is trapped on that bottom left-hand corner.
Shall we bring it up on the board just to show the problem? So, yeah.
Two problems.
The two huge problems. Okay, so if White were to play just rook takes rook, Black would capture. And now the big problem is that say White would play something with the, I don't know, suggest a move, David. Pawn takes pawn. Okay, then Black can play rook checkmate, which is an amazing, and we call this checkmate the back rank mate, because the king cannot escape from the first row. And if that's not bad enough, there's also another threat in the position, which is if you were just to capture, take back the rook, and say you play something else, say maybe you move the bishop. Well,
let's say we stop the checkmate with our king,
exactly.
For example.
Okay, then the bishop would also come onto the long diagonal and threaten the white rook. So that rook is trapped. There's just no way out. So those are two of the biggest threats there are. So White has to be super accurate now how to handle both those ideas. And I think there's only a couple of moves to deal with that.
Yeah, I think white has to bring his knight forward, simply defending his rook and creating an escape square for his other rook. But, for example, if black simply, I mean, there's plenty of moves here, I think a few strong moves, but if he simply plays pawn takes pawn, white is still in a bit of a pickle because this pawn's going to step forward, kick away this knight. This knight has to stay defending its fellow rook. And also, there's still the idea of bishop to this diagonal, creating a deadly pin. White's knight, white's rook are easy targets. Wesley, so he needs to bring his knight out. I think that's the only move to survive. But even if he plays it, it's still big trouble ahead. Yeah, Wesley, so now soon going to go under 5 minutes and bad position on the board. And yeah, it's going to be a fight for his life. If he saves this, though, Wesley, so he can save anything, I think.
So we're not expecting him to move his rook now. Well, definitely not taking the black rook. That's not what we're waiting to see from Wesley. So he has been thinking for 2.5 minutes now. So it's getting dramatic also on the clock for Wesley. So, okay, we have the move you mentioned.
Yeah, we have the move. Okay, so we are expecting Magnus just to get greedy and capture the pawn. And after that, Wesley is now in serious trouble. Just look at all of black's pieces. I mean, they're just amazing.
Yeah.
Every single one of them. And poor Wesley, I mean, that was some fantastic piece of opening preparation.
Yeah.
And it just...
One small blunder.
I know. This is the cruelty of chess, that you can play beautifully for 20 moves. You can make absolutely wonderful moves that will have everyone cheering for you and giving you applause. And then you make one horrible blunder and that is it. Your game has collapsed and you lose.
I love what you said the other day. I mean, since we're also talking so much about other sports and football today, that it's not like in football. You can be up 5-0 and have a little mistake and you're up 5-1, you're still good. But in chess, it's not like that at all. One little mistake and this is the situation for Wesley So. And we do see Magnus snacking on that pawn.
Yep, so equal material on the board right now, but the quality of the pieces all favours black. White still has the problem of the white king vulnerable along the first rank. White still has the problem of the rook in the corner, huge target. There's simply no way to deal with all of that quick enough. And Magnus Carlsen, he knows just 2 or 3 accurate moves. He should be able to maybe build up a material advantage. Yeah, I mean, chess, it's ruthless. I mean, other sports, I think chess... Maybe the sport it's most similar to is tennis. But in tennis, for example, you can lose a whole set. You can lose 6-love, not even win a point, and you still have a chance to fight back. You can lose 20 balls in a row. And in chess, if you make 20 bad moves in a row, you'll have lost a long time ago.
But why wouldn't Wesley So now just take that black pawn? What am I not seeing?
Yeah, good question, Kaya. If we bring up the analysis board, we can see the white knight is actually overworked right now. If it does get greedy and capture this pawn, it would lose protection over the white rook, and suddenly the white rook would just simply drop off the board. And there's, again, checkmating ideas. White's king is going to be trapped. So white's knight cannot capture that pawn. You still cannot go for the rook trade first and then capture the pawn, because at the very end, checkmate again. This king is always getting trapped in every variation.
And it has a very important name, Kaya.
Oh, what is it?
Back rank mate. Although when you first start to play chess, and if you're very young, they always like bank rank mate. No. Back rank.
Back rank mate.
Yeah.
Okay, we do have the move by Wesley.
We do have a move, a very good move from Wesley So, bringing his bishop out. But Magnus Carlsen finds the best reply, bringing his own rook, bringing his own bishop forward. We've seen a trade of knights. The rooks are coming off the board. And in this current position, it's actually still level material. But Magnus Carlsen is winning simply because look at these 2 pawns. These 2 are simply better than this one. I expect to see Magnus push this pawn forward. Sooner or later, the other black pawn will start pushing forward. Black also has a better rook than the opponent. This rook's going to come down and start grabbing some pawns. So Wesley So, he's done his best. He's survived till the end game now, but Magnus Carlsen's still in control. These 2 are going to beat this one.
And we do know that Magnus is the endgame magician. If there is going to be an advantage in the position, he is going to convert it. Yeah, David, we see that there's some numbers above the board. Can you just tell us what they are?
Yep. So the computer evaluation above the board is swung all the way across to Black's side, to Magnus Carlsen's side, giving Black a 2.4 advantage. That's equivalent to having 2.5 extra pawns, pretty much. So although on the board it's pretty much level, if we catch up with the current position, on the board it's level, same pieces, same pawns. It's the quality that gives Black this advantage. It means he's odds on to win this game, and here we see these two pawns edging ever closer to becoming, one of them becoming a new queen at least. And the other numbers we see below the players' names are the clock times. So their time remaining in white and the time they've used on this move in the kind of yellow gold colour. And wow, look at this, Magnus Carlsen. Another couple of moves have entered the board, and these black pawns are so close now. White pushing forward, and in a few moves' time, I think White has, Magnus Carlsen, has two winning ideas. He's brought his rook across. That is one of the winning ideas I was going to highlight. There's simply a threat. No matter what White does, if he brings his king forward, Black's going to step forward with a pawn, and this pawn's coming. If rook takes bishop, the pawn will make a new queen. Next move, if pawn takes pawn, this other pawn will make a new queen. One of them is going to become a lady very shortly, and Magnus Carlsen pressing forward with his advantage. Wesley So, meanwhile, just trying his best to survive. His rook stepped up just to try and block along the second rank, but it shouldn't be a permanent. Defense. At the very least, Black will. Me and my arrows. At the very least, Black will step forward with his king to support this pawn later in the game.
Yes.
Is Wesley defending well here, though?
Yes.
He's doing his best, But the problem is if it ultimately is a loss, then that is the fair result. Wesley will be doing his utmost to survive, but it's a super difficult ask, I think.
Yeah, I mean, look at that black pawn now on the left. It's two squares away.
Exactly. I mean, the quality of that pawn is so insane. I mean, just wonderful. And look at what colour the queening square is. It's a dark square. And what does Black have? A dark square bishop. Check, check, check. Everything is working beautifully.
Yeah, actually, I think White's best hope now is to maybe try and get those bishops off the board, because Black's bishop, as Jovanka mentions, covers the promotion square for Black's pawn. So it will help shepherd and guide that pawn through to the end. So White needs to maybe get those bishops off the board. I would offer a trade of bishops right now. Okay, he instead moves the king. If that king's going in the wrong direction, it's not going to help on that left side now. And Black's king steps in the right direction. But I expect to see the Black king rush itself over to that left side to help guide and kind of hold the hand of that black pawn, which is going to become a queen later on in the game.
Yeah, and we're going to see the teamwork being the dream work, just helping that pawn promote. And that's the kind of very simple goal of the position. Promote pawns. In fact, that is like one of the basic aims in endgames. Yeah. You either want to win pawns, promote pawns, or checkmate. Yep. The end.
Checkmate or making new queens. That tends to be the two most common ways of winning a game. And meanwhile, okay, White does offer those trades of bishops. Black will not allow that trade. He will just retreat his bishop, I reckon, or maybe step it forward.
I would step it forward, right?
Yeah. He does retreat the bishop.
He retreats the bishop so the rook can't get from... The rook can't monitor the rogue passed pawn from this behind. So interesting move. I like it.
Yeah, if we bring up the board, we can see Black's last move. He did not want to trade these bishops because then it becomes harder to get his pawn to the end of the board. The bishop needs to cover this square to help the pawn promote later on. So he retreated his bishop to the best square, actually maybe the only winning move, the only immediately winning move for Magnus Carlsen, because he stops White now giving this check because the black bishop covers this square. If he had moved his bishop to another square, suddenly White would give check and the rook would step behind, guarding this pawn. And the reason Black is winning now in this current position is because if White uses his rook as a blockader, this is a very common pattern. A bishop will now step forward, and look at this White rook. It's trapped for the rest of the game. Essentially, White is playing without this rook. This pawn and this bishop keep the rook imprisoned for the rest of the game, and essentially Black will just use his king. He'll march it ever towards this rook, and eventually he'll pick up the trapped piece. Wesley So, meanwhile, just thinking, okay, I need to get the bishops off the board, offering this trade of bishops, but plenty of ways for Black to win. The bishops are coming off the board. We're going to see Magnus Carlsen retreat his rook, bring it behind the pawn, and we're going to see a situation like this. This rook trapped, and Black's king just going to march itself down and win the white rook. Let's go back to the players. I think we're going to see Wesley So resign any moment now.
Okay. He's already going to resign. We do see the bar, as mentioned, saying a huge advantage for Magnus Carlsen now. almost 6 advantage. So that's basically a winning position, and it's not even that hard for Magnus to find that win.
No. That last move is so classy. I think Simon Williams, the Ginger GM, he mentioned it the other day. Rooks belong behind passed pawns when they're trying to support them through, because your opponent's rook will have to blockade that pawn and it will be paralysed. Look, White's rook is going to be paralysed now.
Okay, and so now all he has to do is advance that black king all the way towards that white rook, and just watch. It's I don't think he even needs to think too much.
Yep, it's going to be simple for Magnus Carlsen. First, okay, he prepares to bring the black king. He just moves his rook down.
This is just being mean. Yeah, I agree with that, David.
We do see in the game for the 3rd place in that match, Timur Ajabov has won his 2nd game here against Maxim Vachier-Lagrave, so he is up by 1 point. That is the fight for the 3rd place, and this is the fight for the gold in the Opera Euro Rapid. Looking like Magnus Carlsen will get 1 point up here.
Yeah, I mean, look at that by Magnus Carlsen. With his last move, he blocked off the white king. The white king was trying to sneak in through that right side. Black said no. Magnus said, OK, I'm going to stop you doing that. And then slowly I'm going to make you run out of moves. White's rook can never, ever move because the black pawn will just march down the board. So look, White has to resort to playing around with his king, playing around with his pawns. And when the moment is right, Magnus Carlsen will begin that race. He'll bring the black king over to that left side of the board and win the white rook for a pawn. And it's just a matter of time now. Wesley So he's just saying to Magnus, OK, I know I'm losing. You just find the winning plan. And he's helping us as well. He's keeping the game going. I hate it when players resign too early.
Yeah, well, Magnus has advanced his pawn. That was somewhat unpredictable, but it's sneaky because I can see the point behind it. Yeah,
very sneaky.
That is super sneaky. Okay, well, we're going to... Okay.
So White's king tries again to attack the black pawn, but Magnus says, no, I'm going to close that door to you. The white king has to step back. Magnus, he's just trying to make White run out of moves. White's rook can never move anymore. White's simply playing with his king and with his pawns. Magnus just trying to suck the... Oh, I'm going to sneeze again. Trying to suck the life out of the position.
He's totally sucking the life out of it. He's just saying to Wesley, make your move. Just show me what you have. Okay, and there you go. The king is by advancing the black pawn, the king is no longer able to run and grab some pawns on the right side. So, yeah, now... all that Magnus has left is to run the king over, and it's either going to be that king is either going to be munching on the white pawns on the right, or it's going to be assisting the pawn on the left. So, and that approach completely depends on White, so it's just completely game over.
Yeah, we saw Wesley So shaking his head. He'll still maybe play a few more moves, but the key thing is Black has now locked down that right side of the board. That side of the board is completely locked down. White has a 3 versus 2 advantage there, but White's pawns are just immobile. They can never push forward. So Black has closed that side of the board. It's all going to depend on the right side now, on the left side, sorry. Black's remaining extra pawn on that flank. If White brings his own king over, Ivanka, it's going to be an easy win, right? Black's just going to take the pawns on the other side of the board.
Exactly. The king is kind of like the box. Well, it's kind of, I don't want to say box to box, but he kind of like super flexible. One side, the other side, you know, take your pick. And yeah.
Yeah, Wesley So just has to wait with his king in the middle simply. And Magnus, hopefully we'll get to see the winning plan there of Black's king stepping down to that left side eventually. Okay, meanwhile, Wesley does retreat his own king. Black's king steps forward. Will we see Wesley So dart across to that left side with the white king? The problem is with positions like this, when you're playing without a piece, White playing without a rook, your king cannot block the opponent's king because eventually you just run out of moves. Your opponent will give you the move, and eventually you just have to, if you go to the left, your opponent will go to the right. If you go to the right, your opponent will go to the left. And yeah, playing without a rook here.
Wesley So is shaking his head. He went under the minute there, and it's back. The clock is ticking for Wesley So, and he is not looking comfortable.
Yeah, Black's advantage is growing. Look at the white king, forced to use the king now as a blockader of Black's pawn there on the left, while the black king is just marauding into the position. Black's king is going to do the dirty work, grab all those pawns on the right side. And Magnus, he's going to get killer pawns on both sides of the board soon. Wesley finally activating his rook because his king has taken over the job of blockading Black's pawn on the left there. But the rook on its own will not be able to fight the battle against Black's king and Black's rook. Look at the Black King just entering into the position. White's Rook cannot keep all of its pawns defended. It's too many of them.
Why didn't Magnus just take that white pawn?
Good question, Kaya. I would have taken it. I think it's just a matter of taste. He's going after White's corner pawn there on the right first. Okay, he could have grabbed pawn there, but
And
Wesley
it's
So
over.
resigns.
Wesley So resigns in the game. His first game with the white pieces. We thought this could be the game that he would win, but it is Magnus Carlsen who is the first winner in a game in the final. The world champion is up by 1 point. Wow, and Wesley So he did come out super strong in this game with a very creative, very dangerous opening. And the blunder, Jovanka, that must be devastating for him.
It's annoying. I mean, the opening strategy that Wesley So employed was just perfection. He had the world champion on the ropes and it was looking like everything was going to be going his way. But yeah, one blunder and that was it. His position was completely unsalvageable.
Did Magnus get lucky here, David? Or are you also impressed with how Magnus Carlsen played this game?
Yeah, Magnus was impressive. Okay, his opening, he struggled a bit. He walked into his opponent's preparation. But from there, you make your own luck in a way.
Yeah.
And once he got an opportunity, he never let it slip. That end game, once the queens came off, Magnus Carlsen back to his best. He did what Carlsen does. And yeah, once he got an opportunity, once Wesley So had slipped up, Carlsen took control, and it all started from this position. Magnus actually just making a mistake, playing queen takes pawn on the last move, offering this trade of queens. We know that has been Carlsen's strategy in the past, but here Wesley So had a very strong move. He should have brought his bishop forward, creating a pin along this diagonal, targeting the black knight, which cannot move because the black king is behind it. And we saw it earlier. If the queens had disappeared from the board, yes, Magnus Carlsen could temporarily defend these knights clinging onto each other, but White's other bishop would jump forward and creating 2 pins now. These bishops have laser-like precision, just locked in on their targets. White is about to win a piece back, and he would emerge with at least an extra pawn at the end. Instead, though, Wesley So he missed this opportunity. In this position, he traded the queens, but he hadn't looked far enough into the future. He gave a check now, but it's too late. Magnus Carlsen giving the piece back. And after a few more trades, we saw Wesley So struggle in this position. The problem is his pieces are simply asleep. And it took too long for them to get into the game. In the meantime, Magnus Carlsen built up that winning advantage later, just cruising through in the rook endgame.
Carlsen is up by 1 point in the final against Wesley So, and with a win in the next one with the white pieces, he will be the winner of the first match in the final. Magnus Carlsen, he's doing great in the final right now, and we know he's also doing great in Fantasy Football Premier League. This is a game where you manage a team of football players from the Premier League throughout the season, getting points according to how the players perform during the season. And we asked Magnus, our reporter, Asker Bryn, asked Magnus to set up a fantasy team of chess players. We did do the defense in the last break, and now we're going to see who he picks for his midfield.
Welcome to Askill Asking. Magnus, we know you're a big fan of the Fantasy Premier League football. We have a challenge for you. We want you to combine your love for chess with your interest for fantasy.
In midfield, we have some tricky players. You know what? We'll go with another contemporary player, Wesley So.
Okay, interesting choice.
Yeah, his general mindset is fairly defensive and extremely hard to dribble past. He can be poisonous when he does decide to attack, and he can get you quite some points. The other two in midfield, they're going to be myself. I could be one of those number 8 midfielders who's just
dribbling, passing the ball,
running all over the pitch, and
good work rate, running.
Good work rate, both boxes and so on. I will put Karpov as well. He has great tenacity in defense and surprisingly poisonous attacking player who has a wonderful understanding of the game. Yeah, we don't have 3 central midfielders. We have 2. Okay, so then So is out of the team.
Okay, So is out.
We're actually playing with wing backs. I think Spassky is good. He did play with a lot of energy though. Probably a little bit too creative to be there, but Lasker deserves to be in the team. But Lasker is probably more of a tricky winger, but he's actually playing out of position, unfortunately, so he will have to be a wing back instead. Who can still use his trickery.
Okay, so then we have 4 players in midfield. Thank you. Catch you later.
Yeah, Magnus Carlsen seems like he's enjoying the task given by Askild here, putting himself in the midfield, David. Also, Wesley So barely made it with the play he showed in that last game. Should Wesley So actually have been in the midfield there?
Poor Wesley. Maybe he'll be the star substitute. He'll come on when the others need a bit of backup. They need a bit of a rest. But yeah, Magnus knows these guys better than most and can't fault his choices.
He's a huge football fan, Magnus Carlsen. We know he's a fan of Real Madrid. And I do think we have some footage from, I think it's 2013, right after he won his first World Championship title. He was invited to Santiago Bernabeu, the home field for Real Madrid, to take the kick from the start, David. I mean, I know you're a football fan as well.
Yeah, I'm so jealous. I wish we'd have been able to swap lives just for one day. But yeah, I mean, Magnus. I know he met Ronaldo, he met Sergio Ramos, he met all the superstars.
But I actually saw, so after this, a lot of those players, the huge stars of Real Madrid, it was the players from Real Madrid who posted the selfies with Magnus, who sort of, it seemed like they were more starstruck, actually, Jovanka. And is this showing what a big star Magnus Carlsen is in the world?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. He is number 1, and everyone has heard of him or is beginning to hear of him. So that's super interesting that you say that, Kaya, that the football players were the ones who were starstruck.
Huge moment there for Magnus Carlsen. And yeah, we did see his midfield there. I don't think, there was only himself eventually as the active player. A lot of historical players there.
Yep.
Would you have sort of chosen the same ones?
Ooh, maybe I would have had a few more contemporary players in there. Maybe Anand or actually Kramnik just retired. I would have said Kramnik, but yeah, all of those players they have their strengths, those clear, refined styles as well, and they're in there for a reason.
And himself as the number 10, the way he played this last game, winning. After he had a difficult situation, but blunder by Wesley So.
Yeah.
Was this a football number 10 performance by Magnus Carlsen?
Maybe the defence.
Yeah. So maybe you should,
he called himself a number 8, so he can do everything. He can attack when it's necessary. He can defend. He defended there very well once given the chance, and then went on the attack in the end game. And I like the fact he's next to Karpov. I think those two have very similar chess understandings. Karpov definitely, he would control the game. He would see the opponent's threats, their attacks before they even arrived on the pitch. And,
but I really like that he's chosen some very, very historical figures, you know, as like some homage to the past, because I must admit, if I were asked the question, I would probably stick to the last 50 years. I wouldn't be thinking of players from that long ago.
Yeah, and I think for the viewers at home, they might not be so familiar with some of the names, but there's so much to research out there, and you'll learn a huge amount about chess history, and it'll improve your game if you go and research those players in Magnus's team.
Yeah, some fantastic chess players and some fantastic athletes out there, Jovanka, and we're asking our viewers about this today.
Yeah, we're asking which athlete would make the best chess player, which famous athlete that is. You can tweet your answers using the hashtag #ChessChamps, and we do have some suggestions that we really like. And the Abaddon, he says, I don't know his name, but I have a feeling that this football player could be good. And
wow, look at those skills.
Then we have Georgi Gorchesvili, who says, we are not even allowed to question the fact that Bruce Lee would be the best chess player. Only Chuck Norris is. Now, interestingly enough, that's actually the nickname that the Russian team players gave one of their teammates, Vladislav Artemiev. They were like, he's too good. He just kills everyone. And finally, we also liked Paul Suson, who says, famous athlete that can be a great chess player, say no more. Pictured below are Manny Pacquiao and billiards legend Efren Reyes. So Manny, of course, being world-class boxer. And yeah, look at him. He's actually playing your opening, David. He's playing the hippo.
Oh, wow.
Nicely spotted, you,
He's my new favourite player.
Yes, yeah. That's a very poisonous opening there.
By Manny Pacquiao.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, tweet your answers to using the hashtag ChessChamps, and one lucky winner will win an AirThings device, which monitors the quality of air in your room.
All right. Well, we did see our reporter Askild Bryn doing the interview with Magnus there, and we are looking for more reporters to join our team. Look at this.
We are looking for TV reporters to join our show. One in Asia, one in Europe, and one in America. You will travel your continent doing interviews with the players and will join us live to report from chess-related events.
Do you enjoy the thrill of being live on camera? Can you find interesting stories and share them with a global audience? Send us some examples of your work and a screen test to tvcasting@playmagnus.com.
We're so excited to expand our team and hopefully getting some great reporters to join us to travel around in Asia, in Europe, and on the American continent, talking to the players and joining us live in the show. All right, well, it's getting close. The third game in the final between Magnus Carlsen and Wesley. So if Magnus Carlsen wins this game, the first match will be over. He will be up by 1 point. It's getting exciting. We're going to take a little breather before it all starts. Our friend David Howell and Jovanka has to, save their voices a little bit. So we're going to see another video of David teaching us some chess. And it is another super exciting one because it's called The Game of the Century.
Champions Chess Tour logo is actually based on a very famous game. It was a game between Donald Byrne and Bobby Fischer. At the time, Fischer was only 13 years old as well, and with the black pieces in this game, he created a masterpiece. He sacrificed his queen, he confused his opponent, and he went on the attack. And we now call it the game of the century. This is the position just before Fischer moved in for the kill. White is up by a queen, but the white king is defenseless. It doesn't have any defensive pieces around it. Therefore, black, Bobby Fischer, decided it was time to move in for the kill. He gave a check with his bishop, attacking the white king. There's no way white can block, and white's king cannot move to this side because this square is controlled by the black knight. Therefore, white's king had to move towards the black rook. Fischer gave another check with his other bishop this time, attacking the white king. Again, the king has to move towards the black rook. Now, black decided to use his final piece in the attack. The black knight came to check the white king. White's king still cannot move away because it is controlled by the bishops. Therefore, white's king had to move towards the corner. Black now decided to give a check with his knight. The king moved across, and there's two possible checkmates here. Black can use his bishop to checkmate the white king, but instead, Bobby Fischer used his rook. This rook is defended by the black bishop, it attacks the white king, and white's king is trapped. It cannot move to either side because the knight controls those two squares. A really stunning checkmate. The game of the century, and the perfect choice for the Champions Chess Tour logo.
Yeah, we actually have to mention the logo that we have that you see on the front of the table here is... no, that's not it, actually. It is the logo for the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour, the purple one. That is that exact game. Yes. Game of the century. I mean, that is huge to have played the game of the century. Do you think we'll ever see a better game than this.
It's going to be hard to beat that one. Bobby Fischer at the time, he was 13 years old against one of the best players in his country. And, I mean, it was fireworks from the start. He was freestyling, sacrificing a queen, sacrificing most of his pieces. And we saw at the end there, I mean, finishing it off with precision. One of the best players in history. And I think it's going to take a lot to match that this century, at least.
So even if that last game we had in the final here, Ivanka, was super exciting and a crazy opening by Wesley So, it's not quite game of the century, I guess.
Not quite, not quite. You know, you need to see some queen sacrifices. You need to see something that's going to leave you like, wow, I did not expect that. But, you know, that one's still thrilling.
Yeah. All right, we are heading into Game 3 in the final between Wesley So and Magnus Carlsen. These are the results after 2 games. A draw in the first one, Magnus Carlsen winning this last one. And we also see Timur Ajabo is up by 1 point in the fight for the 3rd place in the tournament. And we are heading into Game 3 between Magnus Carlsen and Wesley So. Wesley So stretching it out here, getting ready for a game. He needs at least a draw, preferably a win here, to get back. And Magnus Carlsen, with the white pieces, made his move.
That's right, and Magnus Carlsen, he's switching it up. He's trying to keep Wesley So guessing. In the first game of today, Magnus Carlsen pushed his queen's pawn on the first move. This time, he's pushed his king's pawn forward. And we see a very solid opening called the Berlin defense. This one is rock solid. Lots of trades already. A set of pawns have left the board. A set of knights have left the board. White's rook retreating now. Black's offering a trade of rooks. The problem with this opening is it's known to be extremely drawish. Magnus Carlsen tends to use it when he's happy to make a draw. Rooks have left the board now. White darting forward with the bishop. I've seen this position before by both players.
Didn't you use this position,
yes.
this exact position, to draw against Alpha Zero?
That's right. I used this exact position with White to make a draw against Alpha Zero, the strongest entity out there, the artificial intelligence program. So we might see the bishops leave the board. Magnus, he's heading straight for the draw. I expect to see a draw within a few moves. He now retreats his knight. We'll see Black offer a trade of rooks. Rooks will leave the board, and it's only going to be queen and knight against queen and knight. Magnus Carlsen, he's the world champion. He shocks us all the time. I thought he'd try and press forward with the white pieces.
Right. I'm surprised by this, especially by the fact that, the repetition is now coming thick and fast.
The players repeat the same position 3 times, and the game is a draw. Blink and you missed it.
Wow. How many minutes did that last?
Maybe 1.
Okay, I'm surprised. It's not often we see this from Magnus Carlsen, but he has played with the white pieces a draw after 29 moves, about 60 seconds. And that means he is still up by 1 point. He only needs a draw in that last game to be the winner of day 1. But Wesley So will have the white pieces in that last game. And he needs to win that. Wow, and now he has some time to prepare.
Yeah.
Very short game.
I mean, it's shocking stuff, to be honest. I mean, very surprising. From Magnus Carlsen, you can kind of understand his decision. He's now 1 game closer to winning today's first match of the final. But from Wesley So, he's gambled everything on winning the next game with the white pieces. It's a risky strategy from Wesley So. Only 1 game now left. He's going to have to throw everything at the world champion. He cannot afford a repeat of anything like that last game.
So you guys announced it right away when they started, after just a few minutes. Oh, wow, what a drawish game. This is probably going to be a draw. How could we see that? It was so close to a draw.
Yeah, so the game, it started with the Berlin defense. Black's most solid opening out there, pretty much. It was first popularized years and years ago, but it was brought back to worldwide attention by Vladimir Kramnik when he deposed Garry Kasparov from the world title. Vladimir Kramnik using this opening to frustrate Kasparov with the black pieces, making so many draws, just Kasparov unable to crack this opening with the white pieces. And we saw, the trade started happening here. A set of rooks leave the board. A few moves later, a set of bishops leave the board as well. Bishops are traded on this turn. And again, bishops leaving the board. Now there's another set of bishops leave the board. And this moment, rooks leaving the board as well. It became clear that with neither side having real weaknesses, both sides with a queen and knight each, it's completely level. And the reason this game was a draw is because white creates a threat against the knight, black defends against it, white creates another threat against this pawn, black defends, and this situation went on 3 times. Not much to do with black. You just have to react to your opponent's moves. And Magnus Carlsen, he was the one who forced the draw, and he's gambling on the fact he will draw and hold the next game with black.
Is this very unlike Magnus Carlsen, or is it actually very smart, sensible play from him?
Well,
with the tournament situation, of course.
Yes, I mean, I must admit I'm a bit hesitant about this approach because, you know, Magnus had the white pieces. The white pieces traditionally gives you the advantage. We saw how dangerous Wesley So was in the second game with the white pieces. He really had Magnus Carlsen on the ropes. I don't know. I think it's a little bit of a gamble, so we'll see. I mean, it's very natural for Wesley So to actually take the draw because he's playing with the black pieces and he can basically try as hard as he can with the white pieces, and we will have to see a battle there.
It's going to be exciting. The last game of today in the final between Magnus Carlsen and Wesley So. Wesley So has to win that game. It's going to be exciting, and it's starting in about 10 minutes. Now, we are talking also about other sports and football in particular. Today, Magnus Carlsen is setting up his fantasy chess team based on the game Fantasy Premier League Fantasy Football. But it is a field of chess players. We've seen his defenders, we've seen his midfielders, and now it's time to see the goal scorers. Who does Magnus Carlsen want on top as attackers? Let's see.
Welcome to Askill Asking. Magnus, we know you're a big fan of the Fantasy Premier League football. We have a challenge for you. We want you to combine your love for chess with your interest for fantasy.
We have Paul Morphy.
Okay, he'll be attacker.
He was definitely ahead of his time. He was good both positionally, better than his contemporaries, as well as being a romantic player with a great tactical eye. So he will be on the wing. As a central striker, we will have Kasparov.
So he will be your number 9.
He's just an absolute menace.
If you compare him to like a top quality number 9 striker in football history, who would that be?
I think he's a little bit like modern Ronaldo, to be honest. Like absolutely professional, ruthless, and unstoppable. And then we will have Fischer as well. He can certainly get into the box, and he definitely cannot be left out of the team.
That's a fierce attack, I must say. Morphy, Kasparov, and Fischer. I don't want to be playing in defense versus these guys.
We need a manager as well. That would probably have to be Korchnoi, who would be constantly barking directions at the team and be disgusted with every move.
That's a great attacking trio, and with you and Karpov in midfield, I'm sure they will get plenty of balls to work with as well. I mean, what a team. Thank you. Catch you later.
Askill said it. What a team of chess players. There we have it. The fantasy chess team for Magnus Carlsen. And we are now joined by Ginger DM Simon Williams in England. I mean, the football country of England. Simon, what do you think of Magnus's fantasy chess team?
It's a pretty strong team, that one. I don't think you can get a stronger team than he picked there, and some great players in that lineup, definitely. Yeah, 100% with it.
And if you were to exchange one of the players with David Howell, where would David Howell be on the field?
David's a very flexible player. He could be up front. He could be in the middle. I'd probably put him on the reserve bench, though. But no, only joking. We put him in midfield. We put him in the centre of the field, I think.
I think I would be left back in the changing rooms.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Oh, dad jokes. How about yourself, Simon? Where would you, if you had to be a player or the manager, which would you choose?
I think I'd certainly be in the changing rooms as well. But if I had to be on the pitch, I think it'd probably be an attacker in that one.
How about you, Ivanka?
In the stand, watching. But if I were to place myself, I'd probably defender.
All right. Well, Simon, I know there is a Premier League round going on in England as well, but do you think the drama there is it anything compared with the drama we've seen so far in the final? Not with this last game being a quick draw, but with that second game.
Yeah, it's an absolutely fantastic second game we had there, and I'm sure we'll have a look at it soon. But it was there was some very interesting points there that Wesley So, with the white pieces, sacked his piece, but he was following, and I don't know if you're aware of this, his own course that he's just made for Chessable.
Oh.
So he was following the lines that he's just released, which I don't think Magnus was aware of. So it's out in the public place. You know this course is there, but then he forgot his moves. So he got to a certain point and he forgot it. But first of all, round one we had this position where Magnus had the white pieces against Wesley, and I actually thought here that Magnus maybe could have pushed a little bit more in trying to win this position, because it's very symmetrical, but he's got this fantastic knight. And that knight is really nice. You can't really ever take that knight off, because if you do take that knight somehow, let's say after the move played, which I think was g5, then Magnus can recapture with the c pawn, let's say, and he's got this strong pawn, and his rook is attacking that guy there. But I was surprised that very quickly after the move g5 played, Wesley showed, I think he'd be a defender, Wesley. He's clearly a brilliant defender. And he showed his power in defence here by bringing the bishop back round. And in actual fact, Magnus, not like him, which he normally does, he actually ended up defending this game and trying to get a draw later on with that bishop coming to attack the pawn on c4, which is surprising because I'm sure Magnus is still a little bit better in this current position here.
And it was a draw in this one. But then we came to game two. And we had all the drama. You're mentioning that opening by Wesley So. I'm going to go straight into Chessable after this, actually, and look at that. But eventually a blunder there. But you have chosen some moves. Is that before or after that blunder with Simon?
Well, I think the move was on about move 20, 21, 21, 22. So if we can bring up that position. This is in the Chessable course. So you can, if you want to play like Wesley, get that course. Chessable doing great with their opening novelties. And I think it had caught Magnus out by surprise. And Magnus now plays queen takes d4, which is actually a very clever defensive move. He realized he's got to give a piece back. And in this position, Wesley So now deviates from his course and he plays queen takes queen, actually in his course. And the move he recommends, instead of queen takes queen, is bishop c4 here. So it does show us that even these top players, they forget things. So I'm like, yes, it's not just me who forgets things. These guys forget things. So it's quite nice to know that. But bishop c4 is apparently the move to play in the game after he took on d4. And I think this is the very natural move. You take on d4, the knight recaptures, you come in with a check. This looks very tempting. Magnus played a brilliant idea. He could move his king, but he blocks the check with his bishop. And the reason this is a clever idea is that because he's giving a piece back, because now white takes that piece, lots of exchanges here going on, and the rook now takes. So it's like, okay, white's now 2 pawns up, but all of a sudden, look at those guys sleeping in the corner of the board. This rook, this knight and bishop, they haven't moved at all. So Magnus was able to get the initiative and put the pressure now onto Wesley, which ended in a brilliant win, actually, for Magnus there.
Yeah. Do you think, Simon, it was do you think it was the nerves of the final for Wesley there, because we're not used to seeing him blunder, or did he simply fall into these mistakes because he went into such a crazy, strange game, actually?
I think it was strange. I mean, I think he just got something mixed up. I don't know what it was, because normally top players, they remember their preparation. And it's very peculiar for him. I think he got tempted with that check, winning a piece. But then only then did he think, oh, maybe I've done something wrong. So it's a little bit like, okay, sit on your hands, they say to kids who are playing chess. Don't rush with your hands to go into the first check. Sit on it and just consider it a little bit more. And I think even that advice to Wesley there, to sit on his hands, would have worked very well in that situation.
Yeah, that's what you're saying as well, Jovanka, the trigger happy hand. Was that a problem for Wesley here?
Yeah, I think he didn't. It wasn't quite a trigger-happy hand because he didn't move instantaneously. That's kind of the situation when you think of a move and then you make it before you've even known what's happened and you process the move. Here, I just think he just saw one possibility and was just seduced by winning the extra material, as Simon says.
Yeah, it looked like the right move, just the wrong order. And Simon, so after that game where Magnus Carlsen did come out on top, then the quick draw, the lightning fast draw. What did you make of that one?
I was a little bit of a shock because I thought I'm going to have a bit more time to prepare myself to come in the studio. And it's like, whoa, the game's over. It's a draw, right? Boom, boom, boom. And it's like, oh. I mean, it's a little bit disappointing because Wesley now has to win the last round and any quick draw is disappointing. I think it's understandable because Wesley figures, OK, I've got the black pieces, I'll take a draw and I'll go all in the last round. But we never like seeing quick draws, do we? We want to see a proper fight.
Yeah, and we probably will in the last one now. And finally, Simon, we have to give you the quiz of today. We always do.
We do. So I hope this time you're prepared, Simon. So we have a sporting theme in the studio. And so we're asking everyone, what famous athlete would make the best chess player?
What famous athlete? Okay. I would go for, well, I don't know, Usain Bolt is springing to my mind for some reason.
Yeah, that's a popular choice.
So it's a popular choice. I mean, I think he'd be very strong. He's very confident. He doesn't seem to get nervous. Whenever you've seen Usain Bolt, he's always shaking hands with the people at the side. And I think nerves is very important in a game of chess. And he would rush through an attack very well. And he would also be good at doing his final celebration at the end. I think that'd be quite appropriate in a chess tournament hall. So I'll go Usain Bolt for this one.
Good answer. And, well, Simon, thanks. I love your shirt, by the way, and David's tie, all dressed up for the final. Thank you for joining us, Simon.
Okay, thank you. See you again soon.
And we're going to head straight into that last game of the first match in the final. It is Wesley So now with the white pieces. He has to win this game. He has to win this game to tie the match. Magnus Carlsen only needs a draw or a win to be the winner of first day in the final. And we're waiting for Wesley to make his first move with the white pieces. Should we expect something dramatic like in the second game?
Yeah, I think Wesley So, as Simon mentioned, he's done a huge amount of work recently on his white openings. I know the first thing I'm going to do when I get home is buy that chessable course. And here we see Wesley So. He's just going to aim for something very similar to his last white game, to game 2 of the final. He's going to aim for chaos, basically. He needs that. We're not going to see a repeat of that last game. Quick draw, all the pieces hoovered off the board early on. We're going to see Wesley So go all in. Remember, a draw is the same as a loss in this game for Wesley So. Yeah. And, OK, Magnus Carlsen, meanwhile, does not allow what Wesley So did in that last game. Magnus Carlsen is the first to deviate. It's still the Italian game, but no more fried liver attack. And here we see, OK, Wesley So smiling slightly. Both players playing very fast. This is also a very fashionable opening. One of my good friends, one of my compatriots, Grandmaster Gawain Jones, has been playing this one for years. He's beaten me many times with this opening from the white side. And it's become popular recently due to the efforts of players such as Levon Oronian, who's championed this from the white side as well. Both players very well rehearsed. White has an extra central pawn, but black is super active. Black's king also castled away to safety before white's king has found safety itself. Black ahead in development, whereas white has an extra grip on the center with that extra pawn. And yeah, this one is in the balance so far. It does feel like it will come down to maybe a battle of opening preparation again. Is Magnus Carlsen prepared for this? Did he predict this in advance? If not, then Wesley So will have the advantage at this early stage.
Magnus Carlsen in the move, thinking Wesley So, well, it's the face of someone who knows he has to win. Can Magnus sort of here just force this into a draw? Is it looking like that's what he's doing?
He's going to try Magnus Carlsen, but the one thing you notice is that all of the pieces remain on the board, for now at least. There's only been one set of pawns been traded so far, and Magnus Carlsen bringing his knight out. I actually recently watched a stream by Peter Svidler, and he said this is Black's best move, bringing the knight out. He said it's very easy to equalize here. You just need to know 2 or 3 key details, and Magnus Carlsen, he's the world champion. He tends to know his stuff. He got caught out in that last game with Black, but Wesley So now smiling. Why is he smiling, Ivanka? Is it because he's happy with the way the opening went? Is he
It's looking like he can't remember his lines. I had that issue actually when I wrote my book. You know, it's maybe for the first month or so, it was like fresh in my mind. I scored a few scalps, and then as the time drew on, I began to forget more and more of it, and you kind of. Yeah, this kind of writing something or producing a video course is a little bit of a double-edged sword. You know, you learn so much, but at the same time, there's so much information to process that it's impossible to remember everything. Yeah, but I'm surprised actually that the seconds of Magnus haven't checked out the course.
Yeah, that's
that would
highly
be
surprising.
like number one on the priority, right?
Yeah, if you know who your opponent is in advance, and if you know that recently they've just released all their secrets, they've published a huge amount of material, surely you should be looking for holes in that material, trying to find positions where you think, okay, they're not correct about their evaluation of this position. But instead, Magnus Carlsen went into that kind of blind. He just... clearly his coaches hadn't thought of checking out Wesley's chessable course. Meanwhile, maybe Wesley, I'm not sure, but maybe Wesley suggested this opening as well. And this type of position, will Magnus Carlsen be able to kind of freestyle again? It looks like maybe he's out of book right now. He is unfamiliar with this exact position. That last move by Wesley, slightly surprising, retreating the queen. But then again, at least this is a different type of position to the last game, right?
Yeah.
Where at Magnus, he can just maneuver, he can trade some things. It's not do or die right now.
Well, in fact, this position has been played before. It's been played 5 times. So, yeah, definitely in the realms of not mainstream.
Yeah, not mainstream. And just over the last 3 moves, we saw 3 sets of minor pieces leave the board. So lots and lots of trades suddenly. Magnus Carlsen, he's just trying to clarify the situation. We saw with the quick draw in the last round, Magnus doesn't want any more tension. He's done with all the stress and all the pressure. He's just trying to trade all the pieces off the board. But Wesley, so he's keeping queens for now. And queen and knight tend to work a bit better than queen and bishop if it becomes a position where one side can attack. Wesley pushing all those pawns in the center. White has more central pawns than black does. Who do you prefer, Ivanka?
Well, I'm going to go for Wesley. I mean, let's just forget the white position. But in terms of the players, I'm going to go for Wesley because look at him. He has started... Well, he's got more time than he started, basically.
Yeah, 2.5 minutes
2.5 minutes more, and he's just whizzing out the moves. So definitely he seems to believe that white is better. So therefore, OK, I'm going to choose white.
Yeah, I mean, gaining almost 2.5 minutes on the clock, it means that out of the 20 moves played so far, 15 of those came instantly from Wesley to gain those extra 10 seconds after every move. That's how confident he's feeling. He has definitely done his research. He's done his homework. Wesley, the ultimate professional. Meanwhile, Magnus Carlsen, maybe just kind of winging it in a way. But then again, he's got a super solid position. And as black here, there's a few choices. Black can clarify the tension by capturing this pawn, but maybe he doesn't want to allow any checks right now. The other move that I'm very attracted to is capturing this pawn in the center, because when white recaptures with his knight, yes, the white knight is strong, but later on in the game, maybe after a trade of rooks, a bit later, black can at least start to kick away this knight or trade off more pieces. The more pieces disappearing from the board, the easier it will become to draw. I'd be tempted actually to play this right now with black. Just get rid of your opponent's strong knight in the middle of the board. And Magnus, he's got those draw odds. He can bully Wesley in a way. Just say, okay, any trades are going to help me. I'm going to start kicking back your pieces. I think this would be very sensible by Magnus.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do quite like pawn takes pawn, but at the same time, it's kind of clarifying what white should be doing. So Magnus could try to kind of put pressure on the center immediately and say, okay, I don't want to let you have a knight there in the center. I don't want you to get that free move. Maybe I too can put pressure by retreating the bishop now.
Okay, so black could also retreat the bishop first, eyeing up this pawn in 2 different ways and trying to force white to clarify the central tension by taking this pawn and then maybe stepping forward with the rook. And yeah, again, it looks like very, very solid, sensible play by both sides. Lots of choice by Magnus Carlsen. Yeah, I like both of those options, just either taking first and then reacting to that strong knight, or just not even allowing a strong knight to appear, dropping the bishop back. Other moves might include maybe just improving the queen slightly to one of these 2 squares. That's why Magnus Carlsen, he's been thinking almost 3 minutes, because, yeah, he has choice. It's very pleasant. Lots of tension has been clarified already. Lots of trades have happened. So why not start to think now the opening is over, and maybe try and get Wesley out of his comfort zone, because Wesley, the longer it goes on, while he's familiar with the position, we've seen that can be very dangerous.
Yeah, okay, so Magnus has retreated the position. So, I mean, it's kind of interesting, kind of like stylistic approach to this game. You know, either you're going to clarify the centre, simplify basically, or you're just going to say, no, I like it. I like it like that, and just keep mounting the pressure. But, you know, Wesley is unfazed, and this is disconcerting because you come up with a move, you spend 3 minutes thinking, and then you're like, now he's out of it.
Yeah, and look at
Wesley goes, no.
Wesley says, no, I'm going to play again instantly, spending almost no time on that last move. And look at White's pawns in the middle now. If White is able to step another pawn into the middle, he'll actually have 4 pawns in the centre of the board at the same time. And that's a very, very rare scenario. So Magnus Carlsen, he needs to recapture the pawn that's just moved. He's got 2 ways to do that, with the queen, with the pawn. Usually you'd want to capture with a pawn, but then Black would give himself an isolated pawn. So the queen does step forward. Black's queen now very actively placed. But can we kick that queen away, Jovanka? Maybe push a pawn forward, attacking that queen. It looks like a very easy, natural move here from Wesley So. But there's choice again. And yeah, I'm surprised. One thing I'm surprised by, at least, is the computer evaluation. The bar says that White has quite a decent advantage right now. But on the board, it's level material. Everything seems roughly balanced. That says to me that White maybe has something a bit immediate, but it's not clear exactly what right now. Computers do tend to value central pawns a lot higher than side pawns, than flank pawns. So maybe that's the reason. But Wesley, so he needs to find a way to kind of unsettle the world champion very quickly over the next few moves before the queens come off, before Black is somehow able to activate all his pieces, the Black Rook as well in the top left-hand corner, not really playing. So Wesley, so huge advantage on the clock, but on the board he needs to be...
he needs to be accurate. He needs to be precise here. Definitely. I mean, I would also be tempted, like David said, to push my pawn forward and then capture a pawn. So, yeah, just quite pleasant for White.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, who would you prefer here, Jovanka? Whose position, at least? Which one do you think is easier to play?
White.
White, yeah. Yeah, with White, you have some very easy plans, at least. And
yeah.
If we bring up the board, maybe the move we're looking for here for Wesley So, there's 2 main options. There's tension against your pawn in the centre. So you could take this pawn, and next move, you could start to push forward in the centre, creating a very nice kind of barrier, controlling lots of squares, attacking the Black Queen as well. Or you could start this way first. You could kick the Black Queen away first, force this queen to retreat somewhere, and then take the pawn. And now try and make use of these pawns by maybe starting an attack. I'm not sure exactly how, maybe push the pawn forward, or maybe activate the rook. But, OK, Wesley does it another way.
Yeah, he takes your first approach. He takes the pawn, and after I mean, Black has to play rook takes pawn. No one is going to take with the pawn, are they?
You don't want to open up your king.
No, exactly. So, I mean, rook takes pawn, and then we're probably expecting Wesley to march forward with the pawns. Look at those 2 beauties in the centre. They control so many squares. It's like 4 squares. And White Queen just gets, well, the Black Queen, sorry, gets just kicked about.
Yeah.
And...
where do you put it as well? You've got to be careful. If you step to the wrong square, you might get attacked along this diagonal. White has a double attack right now. There's a trap there, but if you step to the wrong square as well, you might get kicked away by the White Knight.
Exactly. And just have to point out that White's queen is on a square that we kind of call Goldilocks. And it wasn't me who came up with the term, so don't blame me. It was I'm going to blame English Grandmaster Neil MacDonald. It's from his book. And he kind of calls this particular square the perfect position for the queen, because the queen can move to the left, she can move to the right, she can move forward, she can move to both sides of the board forward. You know, she just has complete flexibility. And so you really do want your... Yeah, there, you look at that. Look at her. She's so powerful. And this is such an important thing to notice. And actually, if you observe computers play, they often do ridiculous things to get the queen on that square. So... yeah, it's just a point to mention that trouble is brewing.
Yeah, it does look like trouble is brewing. That's why Magnus Carlsen suddenly slowed down. His move in the current position is so obvious. I mean, as Jovanka mentions, no one in their right mind after pawn takes pawn would ever dream of capturing the other way with their pawn, because suddenly the Black King is very open. There's suddenly more open lines towards it. So why not just capture with the rook and then start to think? It's very odd that Magnus Carlsen would spend 2 minutes on pretty much an obvious forced move. The world champion must be looking ahead. He's wondering not what to do in the current position, but he's wondering what to do next move after white kicks the queen away, suddenly realizing that black is maybe in a tiny little bit of trouble because of white's strong center and the Goldilocks queen.
Well, the computer is saying that it's definitely trouble for Magnus Carlsen. Okay.
And Magnus Carlsen plays the move that we thought...
no way.
You said a chess player would never play that move, David. Why is Magnus Carlsen playing that move?
I just lost for words. He's just opened up his own king. He's isolated his own pawns. Look at the black pawns on the right side there. They're completely isolated. There's so many bad squares, kind of weak squares around the black king. Look at Magnus's face as well. He just grimaced. He did not look happy. He knows that's an ugly move. He didn't play that move because he lacks understanding or anything. He played it because he thought the alternatives were worse. He thought after taking with the rook, maybe in that variation we showed, after white kicks the queen away, maybe he thought black simply has no good squares for the queen. But now white's position, there we see it again, Magnus Carlsen not looking happy, but white's position is super pleasant. If white can somehow coordinate his queen with the knight, then white will be in complete control.
Scary CO2 levels for Wesley Soler. 666.
You're insinuating, Kyle.
Nothing. I just noticed. 3-6 numbers there. So let's not talk about that.
Yeah, I guess they're better CO2 levels than Magnus Carlsen, though. Magnus Carlsen's CO2 levels slightly higher. Humidity still. It's been pretty much the same the whole tournament, actually.
Yeah. But have you seen that the CO2 levels are creeping up and up?
Mm-hmm.
So
the longer the day goes on.
Exactly.
Yeah, maybe that's why Magnus Carlsen took that quick draw in the last game, because he wanted to reduce the effects of the CO2 levels. But okay, meanwhile, Wesley So pushes forward with a pawn. This was the move we liked if black had captured with the rook on the last turn, kicking away the black queen. But this time, I'm not so sure it was necessary. White had plenty of other options. I would have gone straight to try and improve my pieces to get towards that black king.
I would have put my knight on the edge and taken some control on the squares. Knights don't really belong on the edge, but for here, I would have made an exception. Okay, so the queen has retreated. Is there anything? Well, now we're looking at ways for Wesley So to start making use of that open king. Is there any kind of point of attack? Can the knight now relocate to the edge of the board and jump in to, that is the route that I want to take. I want to put a knight on that beautiful, beautiful square that David is highlighting. Because just look at it. Can never be chased away, and I can just sit there proudly and say my life is done because I got my knight there.
Look at this knight. You can just never get rid of it for the rest of the game. It's on an outpost. It's anchored by a pawn. It's supported by a rook. And Bobby Fischer and Garry Kasparov, they have gone on record saying as soon as you get to a knight to the square F5, it's worth at least a pawn. And I think Garry Kasparov said if he gets a knight to F5, he's confident he will give checkmate. Simply black's king now is never going to feel completely safe. The knight also, it has attacking ideas. It controls a lot of squares. It also has defensive ideas. It controls and supports its central pawn. So this is the ideal square for white's knight. I would be shocked if Wesley So doesn't play his knight to the edge of the board either now or in the next couple of moves. The only thing he might be looking out for is that if black steps forward with the queen, suddenly there's a bit of an ominous threat down here. Black's queen and bishop lining up together. I think this is kind of, you can ignore it in a way.
Yeah, I was going to say, just put your knight there in the centre, attack the queen and just say, come on, get me. And so when the queen comes to give check, the king will go, fine, no problem, step forward, and then your queen is trapped. Trapped on the edge of the board. Well, yeah, she has to give a check, doesn't she?
She has to give a check, and now white can either trade queens or you can just sidestep with your king and suddenly this queen...
It is tempting, isn't it? A sidestep. Normally this is comes with a safety warning. You do not put your king in the centre. But, look at black's pieces. They just cannot attack this king. And it's more the problem of black's king that is totally abandoned.
Yeah, I think if Wesley So plays this move, if he brings his knight to the edge of the board, relocating it to this square, Wesley So... I'd be shocked if he doesn't win the game, actually, because the knight is just simply going to be so good once it gets there. Okay, he first brings his rook to the center of the board, but this idea is not going to run away for the next few moves. It will still be there. Yeah, I'm surprised Wesley So just improved the rook first. I thought it's maybe more urgent to bring the knight to this that beautiful outpost.
Yeah, I agree with you, David. I mean, well, my problem is that I'm quite a direct player. You know, once I see a plan, I want to implement it, get going. And here, well, Wesley has taken a little bit more subtle approach and developed the rook to the centre. But, you know, Magnus follows suit and follows
do it again.
suit. Yeah.
It's time to do it again. Bring the knight to the edge of the board. Bring it to this key square. And if you do it, Wesley, you're going to be in charge. Your knight is going to dominate the opponent's pieces. But I don't really see what else there is to do for white. So Wesley, okay, he plays it.
Yeah. We got the knight to the edge, and now it's headed to greener pastures.
Yeah, if black's king sidesteps, for example, this knight is going to control everything. White can play around it. He's going to start bringing maybe his queen round to the side to attack black's king. Later on, he's going to maybe bring his queen to the other side. This is the Goldilocks queen. It can play on any side of the board, but the knight holds everything together. It attacks and it defends. It's dominant position for
And there's
Wesley So.
nothing Magnus can do. Okay, he moves his king.
He does move his king.
Yeah.
Wesley will plant his knight on that square. Magnus, meanwhile, he'll try and bring his rook across. Maybe he'll launch a counterattack. He'll try and get the white king. But the problem is, it takes so long to do this. You bring your rook across, maybe white's king will sidestep. It takes so long to build this kind of double rook idea. But then once you finally achieve it, white will just defend this pawn and say, okay, you've got nothing to do next. Yeah, Magnus, he's leaning back, but I think he'll start to realize soon that he's in trouble. At least long-term strategic trouble. He's not going to get checkmated anytime soon. With black, you're vaguely solid, solid in the kind of the loosest extent of the word. But yeah, white's knight is simply the best piece on the board by a long, long way.
Yeah. So we're expecting Magnus to try to generate some play by moving his rook one square to the right and trying to kind of like bluff Wesley, because, I mean, this is the kind of situation where you try to create ghosts so that your opponent panics and starts reacting to them unnecessarily. And if this happens, then Magnus gets some chance to counterattack because it's not necessarily the most accurate move. But what is Wesley's plan of attack, though? I mean, we've done everything nicely. The knight is on this amazing square. The rooks are on open lines. The two pawns are like, well, they're standing proud. What next?
Yep, that's a good question. What next? And Wesley, he'll try and make all the useful... I mean, there's still plenty of useful moves remaining, at least. He'll make all those useful moves first, and then he'll decide how to attack. What I would be looking for white, I would shift my king to right to the corner because it's on a white square. It always feels safer on a white square when your opponent has a dark squared bishop. Meanwhile, I'd maybe start to try and attack black's pawns up there on the left side. They're on open lines. They're going to be easy targets for the white rooks. Maybe I'd push my own pawn there on the left side, just trying to gain some space on both sides of the board. Wesley's shaking his head, but I don't think he's too worried. He's just, maybe he's just calculating. Yeah, when the time is right, then I would try to improve the white rooks. I'd look for targets. At the moment, they look nice and pretty on semi-open lines, but they're not really attacking anything. Also, that Goldilocks queen, when the time is right, you decide, do you go shift her to the left, do you shift her to the right? Plenty of options. Black just has no plan. That's why I think.
And Magnus is down to 7 minutes on the clock now as he makes his move.
Well, you say Magnus has no plan. Well, he's certainly given Wesley a plan, which is now he has a protected pass pawn. Way, hey, you know, great stuff. But okay, there was a consequence, and the bishop has now improved itself.
Yeah, if we bring up the analysis board, a couple of things have changed on the last two turns in this position. Magnus pushing a pawn forward. This pawn cannot be captured because then your queen would fall behind, and this queen supported by a rook. Black would emerge with an extra rook. So that's why Wesley was obliged to step forward with his own pawn. And yes, he's created a perfect pass pawn now. In any endgame with the queens off the board, white would be winning because this pawn protected is simply going to rush down to the end of the board. He's got no rival. But the consequence was that with this pawn push, black has now got a great square for his bishop, this bishop on an outpost as well. The thing is, this bishop, it's hitting thin air right now. It's not really attacking too much, so the knight still dominates it. But white's pawn, for now, takes a long time to get running. It's blockaded by the black queen. maybe Magnus Carlsen's idea is to push his own pawns. He does have this 3 versus 1 advantage now on this left side. So both sides have ideas. Will Wesley's central pawn and knight combo become stronger, or will Magnus Carlsen's pawn advantage on this left flank become the dominant factor? It's still in the balance, despite the fact that long term it's all going to be white. That's why the computer loves white's position right now, because it sees so far into the future. It sees, okay, black's pawns just take too long to get running. But okay, Wesley.
Still questions, because the position could easily turn. You know, yeah, white has amazing pawn, amazing knight, but you know there are some trumps in black's position. I can see a scenario where if Wesley doesn't do anything, that black starts running like crazy with those pawns on the left side, just pushing them and causing all sorts of problems. So tense.
Yep. So tense, and Wesley.
Well, Wesley just kills any possibility of that. He kind of sees the danger, and he's like, "Nope, not even going to worry about it. I'm going to stop you before those pawns even get motoring." And it's annoying when your opponent does that.
When they see your plans.
Yeah, when they see it, and they're kind of like, it's like most rude.
Rude indeed. And now look at what Wesley is doing. He's brought his rook across, controlling one black pawn. Now he's blockaded another black pawn with his own queen. Queen's actually the worst blockaders, but Wesley for now is saying, okay, my queen is on a light square. You can never kick it away. I'm going to improve the rest of my pieces first. But the most important thing, the most urgent issue is to stop your black pawns advancing. And it is awkward for Magnus Carlsen now to find a new plan. He's tried to get his pawns running. That's been stopped. He does shift his rook across one square. Bit of an odd move there. That rook is actually blocked by black's bishop, which is on its perfect square, so the black bishop doesn't really want to move. Meanwhile, Wesley, I mean, look at every one of white's pawns and pieces are all on white squares. This is ideal strategy from Wesley, so none of them can be a target now for black's bishop. Wesley, he's going to slowly, when he's ready, start advancing his pawn on the left there to try and undermine black's pawn majority on that left flank.
Yawning here, Wesley, so in a situation where it's looking very good for him. I mean, he's improving every single move he's making and every single move Magnus is making.
Yep.
Yeah, but he did show some signs of tiredness there. Did you just catch the glimpse of it? Because he seemed to be squeezing his eyes together and shaking his head like saying, wake up. But his position is more than good enough.
Yeah, his position on the board is very good. The reason he shook his head is probably because he's yawning and not feeling super fresh. But, I mean, on the board at least, white has a clear plan. What's black doing, Magnus Carlsen? I mean, he's not only 4 minutes down on the clock, but he's also got an uphill struggle just to find an idea for black, a productive idea.
Yeah, I have an idea. I have an idea. Because black's rooks are really bad. So let's just move them to an open line.
This one.
Yeah, just move it to an open line.
He's not going to do this, Jovanka, because last move, if you look at it, he's just moved his rook across.
Oh, yeah,
is he going to move it again?
Yes.
Maybe he should. Maybe you're right.
But,
that would mean he's accepting the fact he made a mistake on his last turn, bringing his rook the wrong way, now having to shift it back. But, okay, for example, if I start pushing forward on myself, what will you do?
Well, David, we don't have time for that because we do have a really interesting move that he's played. He has moved the bishop. This was his sneaky idea. And never underestimate Magnus Carlsen setting those traps.
Yeah, but this was ignored. So white could snack on this bishop, but suddenly black's rook would drop down, taking a pawn and creating a pin. White's knight cannot move, and next move will drop. So this was avoided by Wesley. So in this position, after black's move, he brought his rook up, and Magnus Carlsen sacrificed a rook, giving up his rook for a pawn. And now after rook takes rook, queen takes knight, we're seeing black suddenly trying to create a pin. These two rooks on the same diagonal. I'm surprised by this, though. I think Wesley, he'll simply guard his rooks. He'll double up these rooks. Yes, white's pawns have suddenly disappeared. The strong knight has disappeared. But rook versus bishop, normally a huge advantage. I think Magnus Carlsen, he had to do this. There was simply nothing else to do. And once Wesley brings his rook across, maybe we'll see the black bishop block these rooks. I mean, white is completely in control here. But there's no immediate winning plan, at least.
And Magnus only needs a draw here. A draw is enough to be the winner of the first match. Is that what he's playing for now? Just trying to get rid of some pieces and getting into a more drawish situation?
Yeah, his rooks were so bad that he decided, OK, fine, I'm just going to sacrifice one of my rooks for the knight because that knight was just awesome. Because the bishop and the queen and the rook can work super well on the dark squares, but I have to say, it might have been done by desperation, but I'm not a big fan of this sacrifice.
Yeah, I mean,
I would have waited a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. I think it was pure desperation, yeah. I mean, there was just nothing else to do. White's knight was too strong. I mean, not only were the black rooks blocked in, but White's knight had to just be eliminated from the board. So even at the cost of a rook, it was more important to get rid of White's knight. And Wesley So doing the right thing, lining up his rooks together. Rooks are great when they're doubled up on open lines like that. I think Magnus, he has to simply block those rooks with his bishop. Otherwise, there's going to be trouble. White's rook threatening to jump up to the top of the board, attacking black's king.
Yeah. Shall we show the danger if black gets greedy? Let's do it, David.
So, if black gets greedy and, for example, takes this pawn with his queen, this would be a huge mistake. White will not allow the queen trade. He'll drop his rook to the top of the board, giving check. And, okay, for example, if black takes this rook, now the protection of the black queen has disappeared and we will simply win a queen at the end of the line. If black takes the other way, Ivanka, if he takes with the rook, it looks equally bad, right?
It looks terrible.
The black king is now forced out into the open, and look at this. The king will not survive for long. It's going to get checked everywhere. The rook's kind of creating this cutting motion, and at the end, maybe White will just drop his queen back and...
Keep those checks coming, David.
Checkmate's coming.
Exactly, and absolutely horrible situation. You cannot survive the onslaught when it's two rooks and a queen. You know, a queen and rook, so basically there are a few rules of thumb. When a queen is by herself, you can probably survive. With a queen and a rook are coming at your king, and your king is totally unguarded, forget it. It's not going to happen. If it's a queen and knight, that's also bad. A queen and bishop, if the bishop and the queen are working on different diagonals, game over. So, I mean, at all stages, you need to protect your king, basically.
Yeah, and the best way to protect the king is for black, I mean, as we mentioned a moment ago, for black to drop his bishop back and block the white rooks. Wow, Magnus Carlsen playing with fire. Has he just forgotten about king's safety?
No, this is unbelievable. No, he cannot do that.
Look at the computer. It sees a win for white immediately, pretty much.
Okay, let's run through those lines again.
Actually, white has a winning move right now. There's an even better move. Bring the rook up to the top. Check is good. It's probably winning, but there's an even better move right now. If we bring up the analysis board, Wesley So is going to have a think. If white finds this move, bringing the rook not up to the top of the board, which is tempting, but if you bring it across two squares, trapping the black king, cutting off the escape squares, the black king has no squares to run away to now. Magnus Carlsen will just resign. He's completely lost. The threat is to bring the rook up, checkmate. The only way to stop this is to bring your own rook back, but suddenly the white queen joins the attack, and this is going to be checkmate. The black king is just trapped. Magnus is completely lost. If Wesley So finds this move, bringing the rook across two squares, this is the winning move.
Trap the king.
Trap the king.
So when you go king hunting, you can either check the king or trap the king. And here it's trap the king. Unbelievable move. Okay, so
thinking for a minute here now, Wesley So, is he seeing this move that will end the game and that will give him a tie in the final, in the match?
And
wow.
The fact that Wesley So has stopped to think means he's looking for it. The most natural human move, the instinct would have said, look for checks first. Drop your rook up to the top of the board, giving check. That's promising, but not immediately winning. The game would go on. And if Wesley So does manage to step away from the temptation of giving a check, if he just shuffles his rook across, the black king is trapped and the game is pretty much over. The only way for black to survive is to give up the queen.
Wow, this is so tense. Will Wesley So find this move? He's got a lot of time on the clock compared to Magnus Carlsen. This is the move he needs to find.
What do you think, David? We're on tenterhooks here. Do you think Wesley is going to find it?
I think he's going to find it. He's spent enough time now to be looking deeply into the position.
No sign of Magnus seeing it, though. He usually reacts when he has blundered or done some mistakes. He has not reacted at all.
He doesn't realise.
I don't think he realises. I think they're just working through the checks. The thing is, though, the check is the most logical move. You know, it's the move that our eyes were immediately drawn to because it's like, whoa, you get going with, especially with two rooks. But Wesley does have the time to figure it out. And the move actually... this rook move that David points out that is going to be the killer blow is actually something that we should have on the list because it threatens checkmate. So It should be there.
Yeah. So in the current position, Wesley, he's looking at these checks. He's looking at check. He's looking at another check. He's looking at another check, and all these checks, because it's very natural. Check, check, check. It forces your opponent's moves. But sometimes the list goes checks. If those don't work, then you look for captures. There are no obvious captures here. Then you look for threats. So it's not the first thing on his list to calculate. That is the only thing really kind of stopping him right now. But he's deciding between these two moves, and this move is not 100% obvious, but if he finds it, he's going to win.
Just look at Wesley there on the camera. He was dancing with his head. He's calculating.
He found it. Wow.
Okay, and well.
Look, Magnus is not reacting at all. His face is completely the same.
Okay, he's trying to keep a poker face, but look, we're seeing a series of checks. White's queen dropping back, an amazing idea. Look at this, White's last move, bringing the queen back, and now the queen is simply going to enter the game and checkmate. Magnus Carlsen leaning back. I think we have to bring the players' cameras up, because this idea, the queen jumping into the game checkmate, is unstoppable. Black's king has no defenders, it's doomed.
The bar is saying 100% certainty that Wesley So will win this.
Yeah.
We're waiting for Magnus Carlsen to just give up now.
Yeah, look at his face. He's,
that queen move is just unstoppable, and there's...
He missed it, and he resigns.
And fist in the air for Wesley. So he had to win this game to tie the first match in the final. He did it with amazing play. It is a bad loss for Magnus Carlsen in the last game, but it's no crisis, because it means they are tied after the first day of finals. Magnus Carlsen sitting there now looking over this. Is that what he's doing, David?
Yeah, for sure. I think he'll just be confused, Magnus Carlsen, where it all went wrong. The opening wasn't the best he's ever had. The middle game started to turn against him. He gave his opponent, Wesley So, a strong knight. And then just when it looked like he was fighting back, he got rid of that knight. Suddenly he blundered, and Magnus just forgetting about king safety again. We've seen it against Dubov and Vachier-Lagrave. He's underestimating the opponent's attacks.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, wow. Wesley So to fight back, it's mightily impressive.
He wasn't too angry yesterday after a little bit of a bad day, losing a few games to Maxim Vachier-Lagrave, because it was Maxim who played fantastically. Is this the situation today as well, with Wesley So simply playing fantastic chess in this last game?
Yeah, definitely. Magnus, he'll be annoyed that he missed that idea, but at the same time, he'll know his Wesley played a masterpiece.
Yeah, well, Magnus was in trouble from the opening, and there really wasn't so much that Magnus can do. And Magnus himself said it yesterday against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. He couldn't solve the problems that Maxime posed him, and it's exactly the same situation here against Wesley. And I think that he will be regretting that very quick draw that he took in the game 3.
Well, David, it was a dramatic game, this last one. It exploded at some point. So where did Magnus Carlsen lose this game?
Yeah, so it actually came very close to the end. We'd actually studied this position. We'd gone into a bit of detail here, and we thought Black had to look after his king safety. He has to stop White's rooks from causing havoc along the back ranks. And in this position, we thought, OK, there's nothing to do. You have to drop your bishop back, block these white rooks, and the game goes on. White is still in charge, but Black has decent chances to just create a fortress to hold the fort. And instead, Magnus Carlsen, maybe missing that idea, took this pawn, just trying to get a bit greedy, but at the wrong moment. White's rook move, giving check would have been strong, but instead he brought his rook across, trapping and cutting off the black king. The black king can never escape now. It's completely cornered, and this threat is almost unstoppable, bringing the rook up to the top. He created, in the end, some space for his king, some breathing space, Magnus Carlsen, but after a couple of checks, we saw that the black king was trapped in the corner, and this queen retreat, bring the queen back, rerouting her out to give checkmate. It's just devastating. If pawn takes rook, we will see checkmate on the board. The black king trapped, and genius idea by Wesley So.
Fantastic by Wesley So, the winner of the last game today. And that means that the final is all tied. They won one game each today, Magnus Carlsen and Wesley So. So it is 1-1 after one day in the final. I think we do have the results as well to see what happened today with the games. Wesley So must be feeling so happy right now, being the winner of that last game in a must-win situation for him. If that game had ended in a draw or a win for Magnus would be the winner of day 2. And we do see what has happened so far in the knockout stage. Magnus Carlsen and Wesley So advancing from quarterfinals and then semifinals. They did reach the final, where it is now half a point for both of the players. Yep, there we have it. Half a point for Magnus Carlsen, half a point for Wesley. So in the final match, the first match. So everything will now be decided tomorrow in match number 2. What should we expect from that one, Jovanka?
I think we're going to see more of the same. Wesley So has been incredibly well prepared in the opening. You know, he has been masterful and he certainly had Magnus Carlsen on the back foot. Magnus needs to adapt to that, and I think we're going to see another big slugfest, and whatever happens, we will have a winner. That is the beauty of the knockout system.
Exactly, and we are right now joined by Magnus Carlsen, and your reaction, Magnus, after that last game?
No, it was okay. I made a mistake pretty early on, and then I just had a very bad position. I probably could have fought a little bit better there by not taking on d5, but it was difficult. Anyway, I'm fairly happy with the draw today. So I'll just try and push a little bit harder tomorrow.
There was one move in that last game that I noted. I think it was the 22nd move. And David Howell, our expert, said, no way will Magnus Carlsen move his pawn here to take the white pawn. No chess player would ever do that. And then you did, Magnus. Why did you make that move? Opening up for the king there.
Which one? Oh, I just thought Rook f6, e4 was very, very bad. So I thought with gf6 at least keep some stability. No, I mean I just I miscalculated something before. That was the problem.
But with the way this game ended, then do you sort of regret going into that very quick draw in your last white game?
No, I was knackered, so I needed needed a short game.
And okay, so the second game was a crazy game. What did you think of that opening that Wesley So made there?
I was kicking myself a little bit for allowing it, because I was checking this stuff during Vaikonse, but not today for some reason. For whatever reason, I thought he would go for the quiet line. So yeah, that was really kind of stupid.
Magnus, were you aware that actually the position for 21 moves, it did follow Wesley So's chessable course?
Ooh.
No, if I'd been aware of that, I wouldn't have played it.
Will you be tempted to watch some of it tonight, maybe?
Maybe I'll make others do it.
Well, Magnus, final day of the final tomorrow. You've had super good first days in the knockout stage. Now you're tied. Does that mean we'll see a very aggressive Magnus Carlsen on the second day?
I'll certainly be more aggressive with white, that's for sure.
And Magnus, we've had a lot of fun in the studio today because we've seen a few videos where you pick out your fantasy chess teams, what chess players you would have on your fantasy team. And Wesley So almost made it. And with his play, maybe especially in the second game today, would you maybe take him back in?
I don't know.
Yeah. I also have a question. So we've been asking our viewers which famous athlete would be the best chess player. So which one of the celebrities that you've played has been surprisingly good?
I don't know. Nobody has blown me away out of that.
All right, Magnus, we're excited about tomorrow. Hope you are as well. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right, and we are also joined by Wesley So, the winner of the last game today, tying the final match. Wesley, you must be feeling very happy right now.
Yeah, hi, Kaya. Yeah, I'm very thrilled, obviously, to win on demand with the white pieces. I mean, white pieces much easier than black, but still it's a very difficult thing to do also. So I'm very pleased because I was able to put pressure with the white pieces. And actually, we were following also this line. This also from my chessable course in the last game.
Yes, we were so excited to see that you brought your opening preparations and stuff that you have done in those chessable videos. Now, didn't you think that Magnus maybe would have looked at that?
No, I don't think so, because I guess my chessable course is mostly geared towards lower rated players, because there's a large public out there. I don't expect world champions to be looking at my chessable courses. And it seems like Magnus hasn't, but maybe now he will. So also in the very first game of this tournament, the preliminaries, I also played my chessable course opening against him, and also won the games against Tamor. It was all from my chessable. So it seems they're not aware, so I better take advantage, because it could get outdated quickly.
All right, Wesley. Well, it's been a very exciting day of chess. I mean, especially that second game was amazing. But how disappointed were you after that crazy opening to make a blunder then, I guess?
Yeah, that was really unfortunate. Really bad, because partly I haven't analyzed queen takes d4, move 21, because obviously the engine gives you takes b5 as the only move, and then it's 0.00. But the thing is, you only check what the engine gives, and so queen takes d4 is actually losing by force. But at the same time, I didn't know how to react, and during the game I was confused as to what was happening. I thought I mixed up already some move order, because this opening is highly complicated. I mean, white is not better, but it's just very unclear. And on move 18, queen c3 is actually very important, because c5 is inaccurate because of bishop c7. So there are some move order subtleties which could be quite tricky. So I wasn't sure exactly. I knew this was my analysis, but I couldn't remember anything after queen takes d4. And so I was hesitating whether I'm still following my opening or whether I'm already mixed up something. But it's unfortunate, because bishop c4 on move 22 should probably just win the game. Black has a piece in return for 2 pawns, but his problem is his minor pieces are very badly placed, and all his pieces are in bad positions, and the knight is pinned. So it's a waste of good opening material. But it happens.
Well, and Wesley, after this loss, you played a draw, but it was a must-win situation for you then in that last game. And what sort of mental exercises or how did you get yourself ready for that game, coming back so strong with that win you really needed?
Well, I just play my chessable course.
Did you?
Yeah, no, in the last game, I also played the chessable course. I had it analyzed until move 20. Actually, I just checked after the game. On the course, I recommended rook ab1 instead of c4. But c4 looks very testing also, because black only has one way to equalize, which is not so easy to find.
And
so
Wesley...
So yeah, I felt... Sorry,
carry on.
Yeah, so I felt like I should just stick to my course, because... as Botvinnik said, if you can recommend something, you should have the courage to play it. But didn't expect this to work that well.
And if some of the viewers attempted to go and buy your chessable course after seeing such success against the world champion, what would you say to them? What should they expect from that course?
Yeah. Well, first thing for porting, well, you can try it. I mean, you have a 30-day money-back guarantee. That's a good thing about chessable.
Very good, yeah.
You can always try it, and if it's crap, you can return it. But I spent almost a month or two working on this course, so the lines are very well researched, and also my course called Lifetime Repertoire, so I try to make the lines very stable, and with a few updates, it could very well last an entire lifetime. But I'm happy that it worked so far in this tournament. But at the same time, to those viewers who are just learning chess, well, openings are just one thing. I mean, it's good to have a stable opening repertoire for both colors, but at the same time, you also need to be good at other things, such as the middle game or tactics.
Well, Wesley, then, on day 2, you are tied in the match. Should we expect you to keep bringing this opening, or will you have something other in store for us?
Yeah. It depends if Magnus is going to go skiing or if he's going to look at my chessable course.
Very good. Well, Wesley, we're so excited for tomorrow. Hope you are as well. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks. Hopefully I can put up a good fight tomorrow.
Good luck, Wesley. Thanks for joining us. Wesley So, he is tied with Magnus Carlsen before the last day of the final. It's going to be so intense. We're looking forward to that. And two great athletes, these two players.
Yeah,
chess
definitely.
players and athletes. That's the theme for the quiz of today.
That is the theme. We did ask which famous athlete would be the best chess player. And again, the answers came thick and fast. We were very impressed. And here are a few suggestions that we liked. So we liked one suggestion from Ex-Body-GR Bodybuilding. He says Arnold Schwarzenegger and Franco Colombo, a total of 9 Mr. Olympia titles, could be the best athletes to be best chess players. And we also liked Marion Otetea, who says Cristiano Ronaldo would be the best chess player because he is very persuasive, perseverant, and would take good lessons from Magnus Carlsen when they meet. And you can see there the two of the champions together. I'm very envious of Magnus's shirt. And we also liked Barry Rawshawn's suggestion, who said British Formula One driver Lewis Hamilton would make a really fantastic chess player, master strategist on the grid, knows how to pull out a win out of the bag, won 2020 British Grand Prix with a puncture on the last lap. Oh, yeah. Wow. And the winner of our Air Things device is from Kevin Room, who says Messi and Ronaldo would be great chess players and need to play each other first to find out who is the best. And there they are, locked in a battle of wits.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah,
that's great.
Congratulations, Kevin. And someone will be in contact asking for your details. If you enjoy the Air Things device, it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it is. All right, fantastic. It's been fun talking about football and sports and chess all at the same time. But David, tomorrow, 2 players in the finals. Will they have to bring out their best athletes and best chess players to win?
For sure. We saw Wesley So in top form. He looks in great physical shape, great mental shape. Magnus Carlsen, we know he can do it. Normally, when the chips are down, in extra time, he somehow brings his A game, and I can't wait for tomorrow.
I know. We're having so much fun in the studio working on this, following the best chess players in the world. And maybe you can join our team as well, because we're looking for some reporters. Look at this.
We are looking for TV reporters to join our show. 1 in Asia, 1 in Europe, and 1 in America. You will travel your continent doing interviews with the players and will join us live to report from chess-related events.
Do you enjoy the thrill of being live on camera? Can you find interesting stories and share them with a global audience? Send us some examples of your work and a screen test to tvcasting@playmagnus.com.
Yeah, I would love it if we could just have some live reporters in Asia, in Europe, in Africa, and in the Americas that we can actually go live to during the show. Maybe they would be at like a school chess tournament or, whatever sort of chess event. That would be amazing.
That would be fantastic, just to kind of have the whole world connected globally. I mean, I would absolutely love it. And I would love to hear the chess stories, because chess really connects everyone.
It really does. All right, we are looking for people to join our team. Tomorrow is the final day of finals in the Opera Euro Rapid, this tournament, and I'm already getting really excited. We hope you are as well. It's going to be a fantastic day of chess with 2 of the brightest brains in the world, Wesley So and Magnus Carlsen. So get ready for the battle. We hope you will join us as we follow the final tomorrow. Have a good day or evening wherever you are in the world now, and see you tomorrow.